This smile of hers was a mask that resisted all pretense from the outside world. Not long after, the group arrived at Secret's headquarters. Tongning was invited to the waiting room prepared by the magazine. Of course, this was to be shared by her and Euro. Secret's fashion designer quickly measured Tongning's body size and was amazed by her beautiful legs. Afterwards, she placed a traditional Eastern dress in front of her. With your temperament, I think lighter-colored clothes are more suitable for you. Tongning smiled without commenting on the designer's suggestion. It was probably because they were in a different industry. They had different understandings. But Long Jie couldn't help but interrupt. Our Tongning can handle any type of clothing. She doesn't need to be picky. At this moment, Euro entered the waiting room accompanied by her assistant. Seeing Tongning sitting in front of the mirror, she angrily walked over to Tongning. Her expression was arrogant as she grabbed the lipstick from Tongning's hands and said to her, "It must be because you're used to being a stunt double, so you don't have the right to choose your clothes. That's why you've forgotten what it means to be picky." After speaking, Euro walked over to the clothes rack and pointed to a few outfits. She said to the designer, "I want to try these outfits on." Euro was indeed good at picking out clothes because she understood her advantages. As for Tongning, she indeed didn't know how to pick out clothes because, for her, clothes were something she should be able to handle and something she should be able to display. In this world, fashion shows weren't designed for a certain model. During the runway, it didn't matter if the clothes were suitable or not. For an event like that, it was all about what to wear and what to display, regardless of whether it was suitable or not. So, when it came to every piece of clothing, she had her own unique way of expressing herself. Our Euro isn't like those outdated models. In this industry, wearing clothes is a form of attitude. How can you be so casual? Euro's assistant also chimed in. No matter what a mistress wears, isn't it the emperor's new outfit? In a man's eyes, no matter what you wear, you will always be naked. What's the point of choosing something that looks good? Tongning smiled calmly. In this world, the tolerance for men and women is different. Euro, do you still not understand this? Euro, don't be angry. It's not worth it if you hurt your health, her assistant comforted. The interview is about to start. Let's hurry out and get ready. Tongning turned her head and glanced at Lin Wei and Long Jie before saying in a low voice, "Let's go too." The interview was scheduled for 9 p.m., but it was already 8:40 p.m. As the interview was being broadcast live, Han Yufan pulled the two to one side and reminded them, "In a situation like this, you need to think before you speak. I'm sure you know what to say and what not to say. Especially Tongning, you need to put away your hatred today because this is a live broadcast. If you say anything bad, the consequences are not something we can imagine, and it may not be a good thing for you either. As for the topic of sharing the stage, you need to think of an answer in advance. Try your best to divert everyone's attention to the front cover of the magazine. Don't worry, Yufan. I just don't know if other people have ulterior motives," Euro said as she hooked her arm around Han Yufan's. "I will cooperate fully," Tongning replied calmly. But, after the past few incidents, Han Yufan was a little afraid of Tongning's calmness. The more calm she was, the more it meant she had a lot on her mind. He really wanted to know what Tongning was thinking at this moment. "Yufan, let's go in." Euro couldn't stand Han Yufan staring at Tongning for so long, so she shook his arm. Han Yufan looked at Tongning with a warning gaze. As long as she was obedient today, in the future, if Euro made a comeback, perhaps he would give her a way out. The three of them entered the prearranged interview room one after another. However, only Tongning and Euro sat down on the chairs Secret had prepared for them. Han Yufan quietly stood behind the media. If Tongning made any mistakes, he would be able to stop her in time. But today, Tongning did not act normally. Chapter 45. I am very happy to be able to interview the two Asian beauties today. Welcome, Tongning. Welcome, Euro. The reporters greeted the two in fluent English. At this moment, Euro had a translator on her ear, so it took her a few seconds to react. So, she could only greet everyone in Chinese. Meanwhile, Tongning greeted the reporters in fluent English. In an instant, the distance between her and the reporters became closer. In that case, The two of you have been using the topic of competing on the same stage to increase your popularity. I would like to ask the two of you, what are your thoughts on this collaboration? Hearing the reporter ask such a sharp question, Han Yufan was afraid Tongning would say something embarrassing. But Tongning maintained her smile as she replied, I respect every job I do. This is my attitude. Me too. Imo Euro followed Tongning's lead and answered with little effort. In that case, what do you think of each other? Another sharp question. Han Yufan broke out in a cold sweat. At this time, if Tongning wanted to step on Imo Euro like she did on the commercial stage, there was nothing he could do to stop her. But who would have thought? After thinking for a while, Tongning finally replied with two words, confidence. This confidence may seem like a compliment, but in reality, Tongning was being sarcastic. Imo Euro had always had a good sense of herself, so at this moment, Imo Euro decided to use this to her advantage. She assumed Tongning was praising her, so her expression became even more arrogant, and she looked down on Tongning even more. After all, in a situation like this, Tongning had no choice but to cooperate obediently. Han Yufan let out a sigh of relief. The host looked at Imo Euro again. Originally, she thought she would give the best response, but she actually said something shocking, in my eyes. The Tongning is not humble enough. Not humble enough. Hearing this, Han Yufan's arms loosened. He almost rushed onto the stage. Was Imo Euro stupid? Or was it because the press releases over the past 2 days had praised her too much? She was truly unrestrained. She used her to compare herself to others because she knew there was no chance of working with her. But now that she and Tongning were about to shoot a magazine together, the results would be immediate. Why didn't she know to leave herself a way out? Everyone was shocked by Imo Euro's answer. They had never seen such an arrogant model. At the same time, they felt this model's EQ was in the negative. Thinking about it this way, Tongning's confident reply was indeed flawless and had a deeper meaning. The host froze for a moment, unsure of how to resolve the situation. Tongning took the opportunity to change the topic and help the reporter out. Miss Imo is a model that can appear on the same page as Senior Hua. I indeed have a long way to go. I still have a lot to learn. The Senior Hua that Tongning was referring to was the supermodel that had appeared on the Victoria's Secret stage, Hua Jingjing. Most of the reporters were familiar with her, but they could tell that Tongning was just being polite. Otherwise, why would Mo Euro still be working for a third-rate magazine? However, Imo Euro smiled confidently. Especially after being praised by Tongning, she felt like she was on cloud 9. In that case, Miss Mo's strength is also extraordinary. The reporters looked at Imo Euro gratefully. Of course, their words couldn't be any more half-hearted as they complimented Imo Euro. During the short 20-minute interview, Han Yufan stood at the side, trembling in fear. Originally, he was worried about Tongning, but Imo Euro's performance today completely disappointed him. Euro, why did you step on Tongning during the interview? Han Yufan asked angrily after the interview was over. Yufan, why are you speaking up for Tongning again? This was the perfect opportunity to show Tongning who she was, so of course I wouldn't let it go. I've already suffered so much because of her. I need to get back at her. Not too far away, Tongning watched the two argue with a smile on her face. This smile made Han Yufan feel even more uneasy. Don't tell me, in your heart, I'm really worse than Tongning and Hua Jingjing? Han Yufan helplessly comforted Imo Euro. In the end, he placed his hand on his forehead. At times, Imo Euro was smart. But, at times like this, she was extremely stupid. Especially after someone praised her. That's why Tongning said she was confident. That's enough. Go in and prepare for the shoot. This is only one battle. You can only win, you can't lose. Otherwise, you won't have a chance at the top 10 model awards. Han Yufan reminded Imo Euro. Don't worry. Imo Euro was confident she would win. Meanwhile, on the other side of the phone, Imo Ting gave Tongning a phone call. I've seen the interview just now. I also asked Lu Che to send it to Hua Jingjing. Hua Jingjing doesn't really care about things like this. After all, she's always been compared to her. So she handed it over to the legal department to handle. That's right, Hua Jingjing was currently a sign model for Hairue Fashion. The husband and wife were both black-bellied. Couldn't a B-grade model have some self-awareness? If she doesn't know when to stop and insists on putting herself on such a high pedestal, then she will have a taste of being randomly picked on. You're really? Since she has the guts to bully my wife, then she will have to face the consequences. Tongning, apart from you, I am not a kind person. A man that could control the life and death of the entertainment industry was definitely not an ordinary person. So, Tongning was already prepared for this. All you saw was her bullying me. Tongning was helpless. She had already forced Euro into such a desperate situation. Why didn't this man say anything? I'll come pick you up after your shoot, Ting chuckled. His wife always did the right thing. He had to support her no matter what she did. Tongning also smiled and nodded her head. She had no way of resisting Ting's thoughtfulness. Afterwards, accompanied by Lin Wei and Long Jie, she entered the waiting room to get changed. As it was a double cover, in terms of style, there wasn't much difference between the two of them. This made it certain that this magazine shoot was a test of a model's professionalism. Of course, the two were thinking of using the other as a foil, but how were they going to do this? Naturally, it all depended on their skills. No matter when Tongning wasn't filming, she was always quiet and didn't speak much. This further highlighted Euro's arrogance. She felt Tongning was timid, and she was the one in control of the scene. As the theme was the Oriental trend, the two were dressed in traditional tops and skirts. Their tops were buttoned up and embroidered on the sleeves. Their waists were adorned with a delicate orchid that extended all the way to their collarbones. Their bottoms were simple yet elegant dresses with similarly stunning embroidery. Just by looking at their tops, Tongning was like a blank piece of paper. She was still in the closing stage. As for Euro, it was possible to see the gentleness of an ancient woman. Chapter 46. The makeup artist and other staff complimented Euro endlessly on how beautiful she was because her personality was outstanding. She was charming and full of energy. On the other hand, when Tongning wasn't working, she was quiet and didn't like to talk. With this type of personality, especially when compared to Euro, it was easy to overlook her beauty and spirituality. Miss Emo, since your makeup is complete, please enter the studio to take your solo photo. As the inner pages of the magazine still had a section for a single person, Euro entered the studio before Tongning. However, as she stood up from the makeup mirror, her eyes were filled with provocation and confidence. This was something that Tongning did not have. So, from a professional point of view, the staff had more trust in Euro. Inside the studio, the set had already been set up. Underneath the retro wooden window was an old table. On top of the table was a luxurious blue and white porcelain vase. Inside the vase was a pink rose in full bloom. Next to the table was an armchair. Euro's task was to sit on this armchair and complete her shoot. As soon as the photographer saw Euro enter the studio, he was indeed captivated by her makeup. For a beautiful Asian woman like her, all she had to do was sit on the chair, and she would be as beautiful as a painting. If she presented a more professional attitude, this issue of the Oriental trend was bound to attract a huge reaction in Europe and the US. I heard this model is comparable to Hua Jingjing, the photographer's assistant praised. She must have a strong foundation. I think there's a lot of hope. The tall and handsome photographer reminded everyone to get into position and kindly told Euro that they were about to start. Euro had a strong desire to win, so she understood. Not only did she have to put in effort for the shoot with Tongning, she also had to take her own solo photos seriously. Let's start with a side profile, the photographer reminded Euro. Through the translator, Euro understood what the photographer wanted. So she immediately turned her body sideways and placed her right hand on the back of the chair. Her left hand gracefully rested on top of her dress, revealing only the left side of her delicate face. However, there was a charming smile on her face. The photographer frowned. He wanted Eastern beauties, not Eastern functions women. The photographer took a photo of the scene just now. He felt the model wasn't in the right state of mind yet, so he asked her to express the intellectual beauty of an Asian woman. He then handed her a basket used by women in ancient times. This time, Euro sat up straight. The angle was correct, but she had her head lowered. The photographer could only see her broad forehead. After taking a few more shots, The photographer's expression turned ugly. How could this be a professional model that could rival Hua Jingjing? Most importantly, throughout the entire filming process, although Imo Yuro's personality stood out, she only had one smile and one expression. The photographer did not say a word. He was still in the midst of completing his task. Meanwhile, after Imo Yuro finished her shoot, she confidently asked the photographer how she had done. The photographer did not say a word, but the assistant beside him quickly gave Imo Yuro a thumbs up. Very good. Imo Yuro smiled proudly. Under her exquisite makeup, her lack of self-awareness made her look extremely annoying. Bah! The photographer scoffed from behind her, but he did not let her see him. Afterwards, he asked his assistant, "Is there another one?" However, just as he finished speaking, the gentle Tongning entered the studio and greeted the cameraman. Her smile did not seem to be trying to please him, nor did it seem distant. However, the photographer was not in a good mood after seeing Imo Yuro's photos, so his reaction towards Tongning was calm. He thought to himself, although the previous woman wasn't very professional, at least she had a bright personality. On the other hand, the one in front of him was quiet and inflexible. So, his attitude towards Tongning was very casual. He casually prepared and casually started the shoot. He did not give Tongning any restrictions, he simply gave her a few fixed themes. I really don't know how these women deserve to be called models. The photographer's assistant did not have high hopes for Tongning. The first theme was the gentleness of an Asian woman. The photographer was not worried that Tongning would not be able to express herself. As long as she acted herself, she would be able to do a great job. However, to his surprise, Tongning did not need to use any techniques. All she needed to do was maintain her original posture. She simply sat on the armchair. It was a simple action, but she added her most precious element, her gaze. Unlike the calmness from before, Tongning was now looking straight ahead. Her eyes were bright and clear, with a layer of mist and a slight tinge of red. It was like she had seen her true love, but she could only try her best to hold it in. This was the reserved nature of an Asian woman. Most importantly, not only did Tongning stand out with her eyes, she also led the onlookers to follow her emotions and place their attention on the clothes she was wearing. It was like she had meticulously dressed up for the person she loved, only to find that the person she loved was already with someone else. So, she felt her dressing up like this was asking to be humiliated. It was ridiculous. The combination of emotions and scenery, the expression in her eyes and the item on display. Oh God! The photographer was about to go crazy. So, during the shoot, he repeatedly said, "Perfect." He had never seen such a professional model before. His heart was about to explode from excitement. In just a short 5 seconds, Tongning had managed to convey a story. Most importantly, this story was related to the clothes she was wearing. This was what a professional model should do. No matter how beautiful she was merely an accessory to the item on display. Most models were able to show off their clothes, but how many were able to become one with the clothes? This time, the photographer was excited. He felt his photography skills had finally reached a point where he could showcase his skills. Most importantly, Tongning was a model that knew how to choose her own angles. She didn't need to be reminded too much. Her casual pose was exactly what you needed. It was exactly what you couldn't bear to delete. Thinking about it this way, compared to Tongning, the model just now paled in comparison. What was a vase? What was a model? The difference between them was like heaven and earth. Afterwards, the photographer asked Tongning to make a few more poses. What surprised him the most was, no matter what he asked of Tongning, she was able to respond within a second. Whether it was a flirtatious look, a sad look, a pretty daughter from a humble family, or a seductive young married woman, she was able to use her eyes and small details to make him clap his hands in amazement. A model like this was the true Oriental trend. Chapter 47. After the solo shoot, Tongning stepped out of the studio. As they were going to change locations, she also needed to change into a suitable outfit. But, as soon as she returned to the waiting room, she found Imo Yuro's assistant guarding the door and looking at her with a challenging gaze. "President Han is inside. Please wait here for a moment." Tongning looked calmly at Imo Yuro's assistant and gently pushed him away. She then opened the door to the waiting room. Inside the waiting room, Mo Yuro was sitting on Han Yufan's lap as they intertwined passionately. This scene was similar to the night she found out they were having an affair in front of their bed. His provocation was as if no one was around, and he was already prepared to win. Seeing this scene, Tongning no longer felt the anger and pain from before. Instead, her eyes were filled with contempt and ridicule. Mo Yuro did not expect Tongning to barge in. Instead, because of Tongning's natural attitude, she couldn't continue. Han Yufan also took the opportunity to push her away. Let's continue at the hotel tonight. I love you, Yufan. Mo Yuro took the opportunity to confess. She was acting like a winner because Han Yufan had stolen the best thing from Tongning's hands. Of course, that was what she thought. I love you too, babe. After comforting the woman in his arms, Han Yufan stood up and warned Tongning, in a moment, the two of you will be working together on the shoot. You need to cooperate with Yuro and Yuro too. Don't cause trouble for each other. Don't make things worse, understand? Yufan, don't you understand Tongning? Isn't she here to cause trouble for us? Don't worry, I will keep an eye on her. From beginning to end, Tongning did not say a word. She simply used fluent English to ask the stylist and makeup artist to continue working. Han Yufan left the waiting room angrily. He tried to understand Mo Yuro's shoot from the staff in the studio. The answers he received were, not bad, promising, very good, and a big hit. When he asked Tongning about it, they all smiled meaningfully without any comments. Because she was too perfect, they couldn't find any words to describe her. But, in Han Yufan's eyes, Mo Yuro left a deeper impression. Since they were about to shoot a double cover, the stylist carefully prepared a black and white outfit for them. Because of the established scene, the two of them were a pair of beautiful sisters. Originally, Mo Yuro's charm was more suited to black, while Tongning's gentleness was more suited to white. But, because white was more eye-catching, Mo Yuro ended up fighting for the white outfit. The stylist was put in a spot. Give it to her, Tongning said without blinking. As long as Miss Mo doesn't regret it. However, Long Jie was not convinced. She stood behind Tongning and bombarded Mo Yuro. Are you addicted to stealing things? Since Tongning has already agreed, what right does a mere assistant like you have to object? Mo Yuro picked up the white shirt proudly. Long Jie stomped her foot in frustration. However, Tongning turned to look at her and said, that dress is indeed more suitable for her. As soon as Long Jie heard this, she immediately understood that Tongning wasn't going to give up the dress for nothing. So, she slowly calmed down. Just like that, the two of them exchanged their clothes. In fact, they were both wearing cheongsams. After Mo Yuro put on the white cheongsam, she indeed looked spirited and lively, which made people's eyes light up, especially the little embroidery on the cheongsam. It made her look even more fairy-like, complementing each other. Mo Yuro wasn't stupid. She knew bright colors were more eye-catching. So, white was her first choice. Who would want to wear a dull black? But on the other hand, black suited Tongning's rigid personality, causing Mo Yuro to laugh mockingly. Black suits you quite well. According to this situation, if Tongning wore black all over, wouldn't it become a curtain behind her? Mo Yuro let her imagination run wild. Tongning smiled and also praised. White suits you well too. Filming is about to start. Ladies, please get ready. The photographer's assistant shouted from outside the door. Mo Yuro glanced at Tongning as her heart raced. This was the first time she and Tongning had ever been on the same stage. This was the best chance for her to showcase herself. She wanted everyone to know that Tongning was already past her prime, and that she couldn't compare to her in any way. Not long after, the two entered the studio one after another. This time, the curtain behind them was a modern street scene. It gave off a sense of vicissitudes. As the photographer watched Tongning and Mo Yuro enter the set, a question popped up in his mind. He even felt that Tongning, not only did she have a solid foundation in the profession, she also had an understanding of photography. From the way she picked the angles and matched the lighting, she definitely knew how to match colors. Why did the photographer think this way? It was because their background was old and full of vicissitudes, but the floor and sky were all white. The entire scene was slightly white. Think about it, on a piece of white paper. If more white appeared, it would simply blend into the background. But what if a little black appeared on a piece of white paper? No matter how small it would still be the center of attention. In order to confirm his suspicions, the photographer turned to his assistant and asked, "Did Tongning see us change the scene?" "She only saw us carry the curtain in," the assistant replied. As expected, she was professional and knew how to make use of the right timing, location, and people. If a model like this didn't become famous, it would be unforgivable. The photographer's admiration for Tongning increased. Mo Euro only knew how to compete. She only knew how to stand in front of Tongning. She thought standing in front of her would make her stand out more. Tongning gave in to her in everything, satisfied her in everything, and supported her in everything. "Come on, get ready. We are about to start filming." For the first set, Miss Mo will be in front holding Miss Tang's hand. You need to show your excitement for going out on the streets for the first time. As soon as Mo Euro heard the word front, she sneered on the inside. Indeed, choosing white was the right choice. The magazine's popularity was no longer a problem. So, her arrogance had reached its peak. She simply turned around, grabbed onto Tongning's hand, and gestured for her to move forward. But how did Tongning react? Mo Euro placed her gaze on a street vendor's stall. The stall was filled with all sorts of beautiful fabrics. It seemed she really liked these new things. It made people feel like she wanted to stay and not be dragged away. At the same time, she revealed the smooth outline of her face. Most importantly, she brought Mo Euro into the scene. However, because her expression was too vivid, it attracted everyone's attention. So, Mo Euro. It became a part of the Curtain Street scene. Chapter 48. Mo Euro had no idea what was going to happen to her. She was standing in front of Tongning, so she couldn't see her expression. Plus, she was overly confident that she was as professional as Hua Jingjing. So, hearing the applause from the cameraman and the others, she thought the applause was for her. After all, Tongning was standing behind her, and she was blocking all of Tongning's glory. Okay, let's go for the next set. Because of her clothing, Tongning stood behind Mo Euro the entire time. Even though she wasn't standing behind, when they stood side by side, she still took the lead. This made Mo Euro quite proud. After the last set was completed, the cameraman couldn't help but give Tongning a round of applause. Like a supermodel, Mo Euro stood in front of Tongning and received all the applause. In the end, Mo Euro left the studio before Tongning. Only then did the cameraman find an opportunity to smile at her. That model is quite annoying, but I won't point it out. When the magazine's cover is released and everyone sees the comparison, she will know how loud the slap in the face will be. There are plenty of people that can help you teach her a lesson. After all, the cameraman was a senior in the industry, so he wasn't surprised by things like this. "Thank you." Tongning smiled nonchalantly. "No need. You are the most professional model I have ever photographed. I have to admit, you can even surpass the Western models." The cameraman gave her a thumbs up. "The weekly magazine will be released next Wednesday. Look forward to it. You will definitely ignite the Oriental trend." "That's not for me to decide. I am simply doing my best." After all, the industry had no lack of hardworking people. How many artists were talented and capable, but were still not popular? Because, apart from hard work, they also relied on luck. As soon as Mo Euro returned to the waiting room, she pounced into Han Yufan's arms and told him about the applause she received. Han Yufan wrapped his arm around her waist and knew she would succeed. But he had no idea. The applause from the cameraman and staff had nothing to do with Mo Euro. At this time, Tongning also entered the waiting room. As soon as the staff tidying up the studio saw her, they immediately gave her a thumbs up. "You are the best model I have ever seen." Mo Euro didn't understand. After all, her language skills were limited. But, however, Han Yufan heard the man praise Tongning. Most importantly, the man knew Mo Euro didn't understand English and assumed Han Yufan didn't either. So, he looked at Mo Euro with disgust. "I can't believe this woman is actually your colleague. She can't even be called a model. She has no professionalism at all and thinks too highly of herself. Not only does she not understand English, she even thinks everyone is praising her. She must be crazy." After speaking, the staff turned around and left. Tongning turned to look at Han Yufan's expression, and her lips curved upwards. Euro, are you sure the cameraman praised you? Yufan, don't you trust me? Emo Euro nodded her head confidently. It's true. If you don't believe me, you can ask the cameraman. Yufan, trust me. This time, I will definitely bring Secret back to life. Han Yufan looked at Tongning's back as the staff's words replayed in his mind. His heart felt a little uneasy. But the front cover had already been taken. Even if Emo Euro wasn't going to stand out, she had at least had the experience of being on an international magazine. This was going to be extremely beneficial for the top 10 model awards. Originally, the review of the incident had already been moved on. But Longjia happily entered the waiting room and said to Tongning with an excited expression, Tongning, do you know what I just heard? The cameraman said Emo Euro looks like a prostitute for the solo shoot. As soon as Emo Euro heard this, she immediately moved away from Han Yufan's embrace and walked over to Longjia. She lifted her hand, ready to hit her. Luckily, Tongning reacted quickly and pulled Longjia away. She then grabbed onto Emo Euro's wrist. What are you trying to do? If you have the guts, why don't you make her repeat what she just said one more time? Emo Euro threw Tongning's shackles aside and sneered as she pointed at Longjia. Tongning, even if you lose, you should at least lose with some dignity. I know you are not happy with today's shoot because you stood at the back the entire time. But you are wearing black. There is nothing you can do about it. Weren't you also the one who snatched my clothes? Longjia once again switched positions and protected Tongning. Emo Euro, I'm not going to waste time with you. Whether the photography team is praising you or criticizing you, we will find out next Wednesday. Perfect. On that day, we will also be able to show you whose professionalism is more recognized by the public. After speaking, Emo Euro threw all the bottles on the table onto the floor. Glass shards were scattered all over the floor. Some of the shards even landed on Tongning's legs, leaving behind a trail of blood. As soon as Longjia saw this, she immediately went crazy. Emo Euro, what are you doing? You injured Tongning's leg. Do you know how much her leg is worth? Apologize to her. Apologize? Emo Euro looked at Longjia in disdain like she had just heard something unbelievable. In your dreams, you. Longjia. Tongning stopped her. Call the insurance company and tell them to come over and collect evidence. There's no need to apologize. The insurance company will naturally pay for it. However, the insurance company will not pay for nothing. I'm sure they will sue whoever injured me. After hearing Tongning's words, Han Yufan's expression darkened. What are you trying to say? What I'm trying to say is, my leg is covered by a sky-high insurance policy. If Emo Euro doesn't apologize, then let the insurance company settle the score with her. Tongning, I never expected you to be so vicious. Han Yufan said from behind Tongning. She was just being careless. Hearing the word careless, Tongning turned around, picked up the bottle of makeup and threw it in front of Emo Euro. At the same time, Emo Euro's leg was also scratched by the glass shards. My hand slipped. You. Seeing Han Yufan's angry expression, Tongning was still as calm as still water. Are you blaming me for my careless mistake? Then aren't you more vicious than me? Tongning, let's make a bet. Next Wednesday, the magazine will be released. If, at that time, the number of people supporting me exceeds yours, then you will retire from the modeling industry and never step foot in it again. Emo Euro was so angry she wanted to fight Tongning to the death. However, Tongning simply laughed. Who do you think you are? If I want to retire from the modeling industry because of you, you think too highly of yourself? After speaking, Tongning left with Longjia. All that could be heard was Emo Euro screaming from behind. Tongning, I'm sorry. I didn't know what to do today. Longjia apologized. Forget it, even if it wasn't for you. Emo Euro would have found a way to cause trouble for me. Tongning replied indifferently, let's wait until next Wednesday. Let's wait and see how Emo Euro returns in defeat. Chapter 49. Walking out of secret, Tongning spotted Han Ruoshua's car parked at the entrance. Their eyes met, but they did not exchange any words. As they brushed shoulders, Han Ruoshua said to Tongning, the day Secret magazine is released will be the day you leave the modeling industry. It seems you have a lot of trust in Emo Euro. Even if she is not as outstanding as you, she has already joined the international scene and added points to the top 10 model awards. As for you, you are already worthless, Han Ruoxue said sinisterly. Really? Then let's wait for the results. Tongning did not have a trace of fear. It was just a simple sentence, but it contained a huge amount of energy. It was like the darkness of the entertainment industry could no longer crush her. Han Ruoxue glared at Tongning. Her determination to destroy Tongning was getting stronger. An artist that was not under her control, whether it was under her control or given her freedom, was always a huge threat. Only by stepping on her and making it impossible for her to make a comeback would she feel completely at ease. Especially since Tongning had such a deep hatred for the two siblings. Tongning, Han Ruoxue's expression is a little strange. Long Jie turned around and glanced at Han Ruoxue. Her heart was filled with worry. Right now, she wants to crush me to pieces. Tongning understood. She understood the Han siblings' hatred towards her. If the magazine really fails, I can already imagine what will happen to me in the future. That won't happen. Lin Wei and I both believe in you. Plus, even if you fail, you don't need to be afraid. You still have Big Boss. Speaking of Emoting, Tongning remembered Emoting had said he would come pick her up. So, not long after leaving Secret, she gave him a phone call. On the other end of the phone, Emoting smiled and reminded her to look behind her. Around the corner, a Lincoln stretch limousine was parked under the shade of a tree. The tall man was leaning against the car door, wearing a black and white striped suit that wrapped around his muscular body. He did not have a smile on his face, but the lines of his face appeared extremely soft. On his right earlobe was an eye-catching mole. Tongning stared at him in a daze. This king-like man was supposed to be surrounded by thousands of people, but for her, he was willing to stay in this quiet corner. Tongning's eyes were slightly swollen. The scene in the makeup room had already been thrown to the back of her mind. She was a model, but at the same time, she was this man's wife. From the first day of their marriage, this man had tolerated her and satisfied all of her requests. And was she going to continue to let the sun continue to wait for the fallen stars? Not worth it. What's wrong? Mo Ting asked gently after noticing Tongning's depressed mood. Tongning shook her head and did not say a word. The words "I like you" were stuck in his throat. Or is it because you're too tired from the magazine shoot? Mo Ting scanned Tongning from head to toe and noticed her legs were slightly bloodshot. His eyes filled with hatred. What happened? Just as Long Jie wanted to explain, Tongning interrupted. Mo Ting, let's go home. I have something to talk to you about. Mo Ting glanced at Long Jie. His meaning was clear. They still had to settle this score, but not now. Afterwards, they boarded the car. However, for the entire journey, Tongning was extremely nervous and quiet. Mo Ting did not ask her why. It was only after they arrived at the manor that he carried her in his arms and carried her into the bedroom. At this moment, it was just the two of them. Mo Ting placed Tongning on the bed and called for the first aid kit. Tongning watched as Mo Ting knelt on the floor and helped her apply medicine. She could no longer hold back the emotions in her heart as she suddenly wrapped her arms around Mo Ting's neck and said anxiously, I've seen everything clearly. I've seen everything clearly. Mo Ting, I like you. I want you. I thought I couldn't possibly fall in love with someone in such a short period of time. I even tried to deny that I was slowly falling in love with your heart. But now, facing Han Yufan and Mo Euro, although I am still angry, I no longer feel heartache. After speaking, Tongning slowly let go of Mo Ting's arms. She looked into his obsidian eyes and said slowly, I know this is all because of you. So, I do like you and I want you. I want the complete you. Can you give it all to me? No woman could say something like this in such an emotional and calm manner. As they had promised to be true to each other, Tongning did not hide her desire for Mo Ting as she spoke in a straightforward manner. I want you. After hearing her confession, Mo Ting lifted his eyes and held onto her cheeks as he laid her down on the soft bed. He used his actions to express the ecstasy in his heart. I'll give it to you. Only you. Tongning was stunned for a moment before she tightly wrapped her arms around Mo Ting's waist. At this moment, all she wanted to do was respond passionately. She knew all too well that this man was worth it. She didn't know when, but Tongning's skirt was lifted up and her waist was being hugged. The fire in her heart was slowly ignited. She didn't want to care about anything. She didn't want to care about anything. At this moment, all she wanted was to become his true wife and become one with him. As it was still daytime, the lighting was strong. As the setting sun shone into the room, Tongning could see Emoting's body emitting a healthy glow. Her face turned red, but she didn't have time to react. Emoting's kiss continued down her collarbone. Tongning was a little nervous. Although they had already been intimate like this on their wedding night, every time she thought about the pain, she couldn't help but furrow her brows. She had no experience. Even though she had learned how to kiss under Emoting's guidance after getting married, at this moment, when it was about to happen, she could only blossom under Emoting's kiss. In her passion, Tongning forgot about herself as the two perfect bodies intertwined without leaving a single gap. A thin layer of sweat gradually covered Tongning's soft body. However, the pain she was expecting did not arrive. Tongning looked at Emoting uncomfortably as her eyes became misty. Emoting tried his best to suppress the urge to possess her as he continued to linger around her collarbone. "Do you still have work for the next few days?" asked Lin Wei. Tongning replied as she panted, "Tell her not to arrange anything." Emoting moved away from her collarbone and looked into her eyes, "Because I might make it so you won't be able to work normally for a few days." "Then, what about your work?" "My most important job right now is you." Emoting once again kissed Tongning on the lips. Emoting once again kissed Tongning on the lips as he asked with a mischievous smile in his eyes, "Do you want me to?" Chapter 50. Tongning kissed Emoting's ear. Her body felt like it was on fire. Her eyes were misty as she whispered in Emoting's ear, "I want you." Emoting's eyes turned red as he stood up to leave. He then pulled out a condom from the drawer and put on a bulletproof vest. He was considerate enough to give Tongning the best protection. He knew Tongning was still on the rise and couldn't afford to have a child so soon. But why was there something like this in their bedroom? Tongning was a little confused. Emoting returned to Tongning's side and looked into her eyes. Noticing her expression was colder than before, he realized she had misunderstood, so he explained, "We are husband and wife. Wherever we go, I always get people prepared. It's not because of something that happened with someone else. I have been waiting for you. I haven't done it with anyone else. I've only done it with you on our wedding night." As soon as Tongning heard this, her eyes lit up as she placed a kiss on Emoting's throat. "I'm sorry. It will still hurt a little." Emoting tried his best to hold back as he gently reminded her. Tongning did not dare to look down at the place that made her feel shy. She simply nodded her head firmly. After all, it's already hurt once. Emoting wrapped his arm around her shoulders. He was extremely considerate of her feelings. As he kissed her delicate face, he slowly took possession of her, inch by inch, until they were deep inside. In this world, nothing was more beautiful than this. To be able to feel their souls become one when they intertwined with each other. Emoting looked at Tongning. He watched as the pain slowly dissipated before he began to move slowly. He wanted to give her the best first time. He wanted to remember this moment for the rest of her life. This time, they truly belonged to each other. Outside the window, the moon slowly rose above the treetops. Meanwhile, indoors, the couple had just finished a blushing and heart-pounding exercise. After being suppressed by Emoting's strength, Tongning was so tired she couldn't open her eyes. Her entire body was sore and weak, and her consciousness was in a half-awake state. Not long after, she felt someone wipe her sticky body clean and change her into a clean set of pajamas. He then gently placed a kiss on her forehead and gently told her to get some rest. She did not regret this time because she knew it was all worth it. In their deep sleep, the couple's fingers were intertwined. Emoting hugged Tongning and lovingly placed a kiss on her forehead. "Hello, Mrs. Emo." The next morning, Tongning woke up in Emoting's arms. Seeing the man who now belonged to her, a satisfied smile appeared on her face. From now on, no matter how dirty the entertainment industry was, at least she had someone to rely on and her heart was filled with faith. However, this warmth did not last for 3 days. Early in the morning, Linwei knocked on Tongning's door. Secrets Mina had invited everyone from Tianyi for lunch. Of course, Tongning had to attend. Secrets magazine was currently in full swing, and Tongning's professionalism didn't allow her to be known as someone who acted like a big shot before the magazine's release. However, she never imagined this gathering was another attack that Han Yufan and Imo Euro had prepared for her. Han Yufan and Imo Euro actually announced their engagement during the banquet. Han Yufan was tall and handsome, while Imo Euro was timid and helpless. Their fingers were intertwined, and they looked like a golden couple. Apart from the people from Tianyi, there were also a few higher-ups from Secret. They didn't know about the relationship between Tongning and Han Yufan, so they stood up and clapped enthusiastically. Only Tongning, Lin Wei, and Long Jie remained motionless. Tongning, aren't you going to congratulate them? Han Ruoxue held onto her wine glass as she stared at Tongning. She wanted to see Tongning's heartbroken expression. No matter how well she acted on the surface, inside, she was definitely suffering and in pain, like she was bleeding. That's right, with your tolerance, you won't be able to congratulate others. Even if you were once Yufan's fiancé, that is all in the past. Since you've entered this industry, you should be prepared to be snatched away at any time. You should relax a little. How long will the engagement be? Tongning asked calmly. After Secrets magazine sells well, Han Ruoxue replied firmly. Relying on her PR, Imo Euro was able to maintain a high profile within the country. With the addition of all sorts of arguments from fans, Secrets magazine had become popular even before it was released. Although there was no way to wash away the negative news of a mistress, due to the increase in popularity, Tianyi had already started to contact them for endorsements. As for the top 10 model awards, they had high hopes. So, she had the confidence to make Secrets magazine sell well. In that case, let me congratulate you first. Tongning maintained her smile as she raised her wine glass and congratulated the two. However, when these words landed in Imo Euro's ears, they sounded harsh. Tongning, stop pretending. I know you don't want to see me and Yufan get engaged. You have a deep hatred for me. Don't tell me I should like you? Tongning laughed as she asked back. Mina watched the argument in a daze. From the translator, she found out about the relationship between the three and revealed a surprised expression. No wonder they had targeted Tongning from the start. Although she knew the industry supported the strong and stepped on the weak, it was common to see people being humiliated in front of others. But didn't Tianyi's people know what Imo Euro's standards were like? Mina looked at Tongning with deep meaning before once again retreating from Tianyi's internal conflict. After dinner, the people from Secret had already left. Only a few of them remained at the table. Imo Euro took the opportunity to point at Tongning and laugh mockingly. Did you think by asking Tianyi for a semi-free contract, you would be able to find a way out? Let me tell you, without Tianyi, you are nothing. Tianyi can support you, but they can also step on you. You've spent so much energy and put in so much effort, yet, in the end, all your hard work has gone to my benefit. Yufan and his reputation as an international model are both mine. As for you, all you can do is return to being a has-been model and never have a chance to make a comeback. Indeed, you are stronger than me. With the release of Secret magazine, I'm sure your reputation and offers will skyrocket. I have nothing. Tongning continued to support Imo Euro. Imo Euro didn't expect Tongning to admit defeat. She had never felt so good about Tongning's submission. Since you know where you stand, after returning to China, as long as you keep to your responsibilities, Yufan will still find you a job. But, if you still have any thoughts of surpassing me, don't blame us for not showing mercy. That's enough, babe. Sit down and talk. Han Yufan coaxed Imo Euro. Han Yufan coaxed Imo Euro as he looked at Tongning with ridicule. Tongning, did you hear what Euro said? Chapter 51. Let's wait for the magazine to come out first. Tongning stood up calmly. However, Imo Euro called out to her. Tongning, I know you don't like the fact that I've stepped on you. I will definitely make you accept it wholeheartedly. Hearing Imo Euro's low voice that sounded like she was making an oath, Tongning sneered as she turned to leave. However, before she took a step forward, she said to the group without turning her head, I've spent the entire journey listening to your arrogant cries. Since you are so impatient, you can leave first. The US has nothing to do with you anymore, Han Yufan said as he raised his eyebrows. I couldn't ask for more. Han Yufan and Mo Euro simply assumed Tongning was traumatized and wanted to avoid seeing their engagement. But that was fine too. As long as Secrets magazine was released, Tongning would no longer be a threat to her. With Han Yufan in her grasp, she no longer needed to care about Tongning. After all, she had so many competitors. Why would she waste her energy on a model that was past her prime? Han Yufan and the others watched as Tongning left. At this time, Han Ruoxue calmly suggested, we can't let her leave in such a low profile. Yufan, release a press release saying Tongning has been defeated and escaped from the battle in the US. Sis, don't worry, I know what to do. Han Yufan nodded as he hugged Mo Euro. Speaking of which, it was quite ironic. To give up on an artist, a management agency would actually suppress them to such an extent. Behind her, there was a long shadow of a conspiracy. Yet, Tongning held her head high without any fear. Outside the hotel, Mina's assistant was waiting for Tongning. After arriving at Secret's headquarters, Mina pulled out a document and said, the photographer and I have recommended the highlights of your commercial to a few famous brands. After seeing them, they are very interested in you. One of them is a famous French cosmetics company. They want you to be their spokesperson for the Asian region. However, the condition is that their products and you must first appear in Secret magazine and help us open up the Asian market. Tongning, we have all seen how your management agency treats you, but we don't want to bury you. So, we will not announce this news to the public for now. We will wait until Secret's Oriental Trend magazine is released before we announce it. Tongning looked at the information in her hands. Looking at the French brand called ISN, her eyes lit up. Although this was a local French brand, it had been established over 100 years ago. It was just that they had never entered the Asian market. What an unexpected surprise. Mina, do you have that much confidence in me? You and I both know what we're doing. Tongning, do you know what I admire the most about you? Mina smiled and said with a trace of admiration in her voice, you are calm and not arrogant. You are a natural model and a future supermodel. I believe in my judgment. Hearing the conversation between the two, Long Jia immediately started clapping. She was so excited that she wanted to scream. Mo Euro would never have imagined. While she was still using despicable methods to ruin Tongning's reputation and stepping on her to accept shady deals, Tongning had already secretly become the Asian spokesperson for a French brand. He wondered how much Mo Euro would be affected by this news once it got out. The day after tomorrow, I will arrange for you to meet with the people from ISN in secret. We will discuss the details at that time. Thank you, Mina. Tongning stood up and shook Mina's hand. No need to thank me. I'm not helping you. We are helping each other. Mina gave Tongning a warm hug. Luckily, she didn't miss out on such an outstanding model because of Han Ruoxue's deceit. Luckily, she didn't miss out on a chance to revive Secret because of a moment of pride. Tongning smiled as she pocketed the Asian endorsement without batting an eyelid. Lin Wei looked at Tongning from behind and revealed an admiring smile. She knew Tongning had endured a lot in public, but because of her hard work, she had finally received the rewards she deserved. Let's go home and open a bottle of champagne to celebrate, this time. I'm sure Han Yufan and the others will be angered to death. Long Jie revealed a childlike smile. Tongning, does that mean we won't be returning to China for a while? Lin Wei asked. Han Ruoxue will think it's a pity. I'm afraid the press release has already been prepared to make a big deal out of my return. But, do you believe it? Mo Euro will be happy because she will be able to humiliate me in front of everyone again. Tongning could see through everyone's thoughts, so Lin Wei smiled in agreement. She was afraid that was the case. In that case, I will give them a phone call in a moment to tell them we won't be returning to China for now. We will wait for the Oriental Trend to be released. Lin Wei, do some research on ISN and do some background checks to make sure nothing goes wrong. Tongning instructed, your decisions have always been right. Regardless of everything, Tongning felt her cooperation with Lin Wei was becoming better and better, so her trust in her increased. Because of Long Jie's personality, although she could also do big things, Tongning felt she was better placed in her current position. Tongning felt a little uncomfortable sitting in the car, so she naturally changed her position. Long Jie looked at her and raised an eyebrow. Is your waist hurting? Uh-huh. Tongning nodded. Are your legs still sore? After hearing this question, Tongning lifted her head and looked at Long Jie helplessly. It turned out, Long Jie had been teasing her. Mrs. Imo, why are you blushing? Tongning was reminded of the intimate scene from last night. Imo Ting's sexy body, the appropriate amount of strength, his deep and alluring voice, and his magical hands. They had only been apart for one morning, yet she was already thinking about him. Since you still have 2 days off, you should spend some time with your husband. Okay, Tongning had the same plan. Meanwhile, after receiving a phone call from Lin Wei, Han Yufan's face was filled with anger. He had already prepared the press release and contacted the media, yet Tongning refused to leave just like that. Yufan, this is a good thing. Let's all wait for the results of the magazine together. I want to see her face after losing so badly, Imo Euro said as she hugged Han Yufan. Plus, she is no longer a threat. From now on, we will have plenty of opportunities to step on her. I just want to stand up for you. I know you want to, that's enough. After all, we are about to get engaged, Imo Euro said shyly. After being comforted, Han Yufan held back his anger. Since Tongning wanted to humiliate herself, then she couldn't blame them. However, while they were enjoying themselves, Tongning secretly met with ISN twice. Both parties were satisfied, and the contract was quickly delivered to them. She was sure the higher-ups of Tianyi would be satisfied with the contract. The critical hit was not far away. Chapter 52. Hey guys, have you guys bought the latest issue of Secrets magazine? Are you talking about the Oriental Trend issue? I bought it. I originally wanted to buy Royal Style, but I was attracted by Secret's cover. Are you all crazy? It's been years since Secret has produced a good report. They don't understand fashion at all. Hurry, go buy it. Secret has not let us down this time. If you don't buy it, you will regret it. That's right. After a period of intense preparation, Secret finally released the latest issue of their weekly magazine, Oriental Trend. Originally, Secret had long lost their position among all the other magazines and had no sales to speak of. However, with the release of this issue, the black and white cover of the magazine stood out from the rest of the other colorful magazines. Even passers-by couldn't help but be attracted to the cover and stop in front of it for 3 seconds. In just 3 short days, all the major news agencies called Secret one after another to request a second print run and to increase their circulation. Secret was undoubtedly the black horse amongst the newsstands. Many of those who didn't have high hopes for Secret were so regretful that their intestines turned green. As Secret exploded in popularity, the woman on the cover also became a hot topic. She was ranked at the top of the most popular search engines in the US. The most popular search terms were Secret Oriental Trend, Secret Oriental Woman, and Tongning, the beautiful face of the East. The hot sales of the Oriental Trend, without a doubt, allowed Secret to make a beautiful comeback in many years. The industry once again looked at them and redefined them. In just 3 days, the sales of the Oriental Trend had broken the records of many big-name magazines. In one fell swoop, they became the new favorite of the fashion industry. At the same time, a fresh Oriental Trend began to blow in the free and easy Western countries. Secret had finally succeeded, and the model on the cover had definitely played a huge role. Imo Euro couldn't wait to participate in the top 10 model awards. However, that night, Han Ruoxue looked at the search engine on her computer for a long time. But, no matter how hard she searched, she couldn't find a single mention of Imo Euro. Not a single model had participated in a cover shoot, yet there was no mention of her. What did Tongning do? Han Ruoxue didn't mention this to Imo Euro. Apart from preparing for her engagement with Han Yufan, she also wanted to look at the future. Beside her hand was the magazine that Tongning and Imo Euro had shot together. She couldn't deny that Tongning's professionalism was many times better than she had imagined. She had underestimated Tongning. 2 days later, Secret held a celebration dinner for their comeback. Imo Euro and Tongning were also invited. This was the first time the two of them appeared in front of the media since their interview on the eve of the shoot. That night, Imo Euro was dressed in a black floor-length dress. Her chest was adorned with sparkling diamonds. Accompanied by Han Yufan and Han Ruoxue, she attended the celebration dinner. At the entrance, she bumped into Tongning, who was also dressed up. Tonight, it was like Tongning had swapped outfits with Immerse. Immerse was dressed in a black dress with a calm aura, while Tongning was dressed in an off-the-shoulder white dress, giving off a lively vibe. Tongning, I need to thank you for putting in so much effort for my top 10 model awards. Immerse spoke first. Do you know how many domestic endorsements I've secured in such a short period of time? So, you're still using Hua Jingjing to hype up your international model news? Tongning gave a gentle smile. This smile made Immerse angry and made Han Ruoxue clench her fists tightly. It was like she wanted to dig Tongning's eyes out. Oh my god, is that the Asian model, Tongning? It's Tongning, it's her. Hurry, let's go interview her. Afterwards, the two groups of people brushed past each other. Because Tongning had no time to answer Immerse's questions, a group of foreign reporters had already rushed towards her with cameras in hand. In order to avoid the reporters, Tongning left Immerse and Han Ruoxue behind and entered the hotel. However, Immerse was completely ignored. Let's go in too. Han Yufan hugged Immerse. In a fashion empire like the US, because he was busy getting engaged to Immerse, he hadn't had the time to realize why Immerse was ignored. However, Han Ruoxue was well aware. Oh my god, Tongning is here. Tongning has appeared. Tongning. Because of Tongning's appearance, the atmosphere at the celebration banquet became even more lively. Meanwhile, Immerse, who was standing behind Tongning, was like a transparent entity. No one noticed her existence. Seeing this, Immerse sneered. Both of them had appeared on the same magazine. How could Tongning, who was so popular, not be mentioned by anyone? Tongning was too despicable. She actually bought fans to boost her own popularity. Afterwards, Mina looked at Tongning and Immerse from the stage. However, she did not show favoritism and directly invited both of them onto the stage. But, welcome everyone. The two biggest contributors to Secret's success are standing in front of you. They are our cover models, Tongning and Immerse. Hearing Tongning's name, no one was surprised. Over the past few days, news and photos of Tongning had been everywhere. Although it wasn't overwhelming, it was still shocking. But, Immerse, who was it? The reporters below the stage couldn't help but look at each other in confusion. Although this issue of the magazine was great, and they had seen it many times, they had never noticed that apart from Tongning, there was someone else on the cover. So, when Mina invited Immerse out, everyone was confused. Who is that? Oh, I remember now. The one holding onto Tongning's hand in the background. I thought she was also part of the background. Look at her. She looks exactly like an American pimp. Oh God, if I didn't see it, I wouldn't have known. Now that I see it, how could she have the guts to stand beside Tongning? The difference is too big. Hearing these discussions, Immerse's expression changed. She never imagined. Not only did Tongning buy fans, she also insulted and humiliated her in front of everyone. So, she turned her body and questioned Tongning. Tongning, you sure are ruthless. Did you think by insulting me like this, you would be able to cover up my glory? For Secret to have the sales it has today, I have played a huge part in it. But I never thought you would be so despicable as to insult me at the celebration banquet. You think too highly of yourself. Tongning turned her head and smiled calmly. Immerse stood awkwardly on the stage. She assumed everyone below the stage was Tongning's people. She even pointed at the woman and asked, "How much did Tongning pay you? How dare you flatter her and step on me like this? Are you a dog?" Mina turned her head and looked at Immerse as her assistant translated for her. Afterwards, she angrily walked over to Immerse and said, "I invited you here out of respect and courtesy. Miss Immerse, is this how you treat yourself? How dare you insult a reporter in such a public setting?" Chapter 53. They were hired by Tongning, otherwise, why would they only pay attention to Tongning and insult me? Immerse asked firmly. After listening to the translation, Mina sneered. Originally, today was a day worth celebrating and I didn't want to argue with you. But, Miss Immerse, I've never seen a magazine with two models on the front cover. One model is extremely popular, and the other has barely received any mentions. 0. Do you know what this means? In other words, apart from the people present, the entire US and even the entire world, as long as they see this magazine, no one has noticed your existence. The translator translated Mina's words word for word to Emo Euro. After hearing this, Emo Euro's face turned pale. This is impossible. This must be your scheme. You guys set me up. Emo Euro couldn't believe it. She was clearly on the cover of the magazine. How could she have 0 mentions? This was impossible. Don't you know what level you were at? Before the magazine was even released, we were already prepared for you to be used as a foil. But I never thought you would be worse than a foil and be reduced to the background. You don't even have a sense of existence. Mina pulled out a copy of Secret's latest magazine and handed it to Emo Euro. If she hadn't attended this celebration dinner, Emo Euro would still be able to see her existence. But after hearing everyone say that she was the scene on the screen, only then did her confidence crumble. Because Tongning was too good at making use of the environment, she really did look like a backdrop. Tongning's eyes were so lively, compared to her dull and arrogant expression. They were like clouds and mud. This was the reason why Emo Euro had 0 mentions, because no one could tell she was alive. Emo Euro held onto the magazine and took a few steps back. If it wasn't for Han Yufan holding onto her, she would have fallen off the stage. I heard in your country, there are reports comparing you to Hua Jingjing. If I were you, I would hide in the US for the rest of my life because I don't have the face to go back. Emo Euro felt like she had been struck by lightning. Her mind went blank as she stared at herself on the cover of the magazine. This can't be. Everyone was praising her professionalism. How could she not be better than Tongning? This can't be possible. Tongning must have done something. It must be. Tongning, I never thought you would do this to me. Emo Euro accused Tongning crazily. Han Yufan also looked at Tongning angrily. For the sake of revenge, you are willing to do anything? Revenge? Tongning smiled sweetly. President Han, why don't you tell me? I'm just a person with no background, no top manager, and even my clothes get snatched away during filming. How can I be so unscrupulous? Was I the one who made her receive 0 mentions? It was obviously she wasn't professional enough. Tongning said with a sigh. That's because you shamelessly rubbed someone else's thigh. If this is considered revenge, the real revenge is Tongning will. After Emo, Mina won. Tongning, Mina, Ning, I. Emo, Yang, Tongning, I. Tanjing 2. They were 2 tall and handsome French men. As they walked down the red carpet, they approached Tongning and Mina and gave them an affectionate hug. They then turned to the guests and announced, "We will be inviting the top model, Tongning, to be the spokesperson for ISN in Asia." ISN, a top French brand with a history of over 100 years. Just as they were planning to expand their territory, they actually asked Tongning to be their spokesperson. What's more, it was the entire Asian region, on the other hand. Although Emo Euro managed to get a lot of endorsement deals by relying on her thighs, not a single one of them was truly presentable. They couldn't even be ranked in Beijing. So how could they compare to international brands? Emo Euro's face turned even paler as her body swayed. If news of what happened in the US got out, she might not even be able to keep her cheap endorsement deals. When did you get the endorsement? Don't you know you need the company's approval? Han Yufan questioned Tongning angrily in front of everyone. Tongning turned around and said to Han Yufan, "The contract has already been handed to the higher-ups of Tianyi. I forgot to tell you, they all approved. As for when I accepted the deal, it was obviously when you and Mo Euro were getting intimate and preparing for your engagement. While I was working, what were you doing? If you don't want to be the CEO of Tianyi anymore, you can step down. There are plenty of people who want to be the CEO. How was it? How can this be considered revenge? Han Yufan, let me give you a warning. If you continue to protect Emo Euro, Tianyi has decided to give up on you." Emo Euro had already been left far behind by Tongning, but Han Yufan still didn't know how to judge the situation. He kept finding trouble with Tongning. Not only did he not give her face in public, he even deliberately created trouble for her. Of course, the shareholders of Tianyi weren't happy with Han Yufan's actions. Tongning endorsing an international brand would help Tianyi take another step forward. Not only did he not support Tianyi, he even tried to defame Tongning for the sake of Imo Euro. All the money and energy they had previously invested in Imo Euro, because of Secret's lack of activity, was like a stone thrown into the ocean. There was no progress at all. He used the excuse of sharing the stage with Tongning, but in the end, he was reduced to her background. Was this what Han Yufan meant when he bragged that his professional skills were comparable to Hua Jingjing's? In other words, at this moment, Imo Euro had gone from being the most promising international model to falling to rock bottom. She had become an abandoned chess piece. She had been defeated so badly by Tongning that everyone thought she was dead. Who would bother to search for someone that only existed in the background? Han Ruoxue glared at Tongning. She never expected, while they were relaxing, Tongning would take advantage of the opportunity to approach such a famous French brand and leave Imo Euro in the dust. As a manager, this was the first time she had no way of dealing with an artist. Especially after this issue of Secrets magazine, Tongning's popularity and status would once again rise. On the other hand, what about Imo Euro? Mina didn't want a celebration party to become a battlefield for Tianyi's internal strife. So, she hired security to kick Imo Euro out of the hotel. However, she was stopped by Han Ruoxue. We can leave on our own. Tongning, you are ruthless. No matter how ruthless she was, she had done it fair and square. No matter if it was winning, or if it was the endorsement deal for ISN, this was not enough. Watching the three of them being kicked out of the hotel in such a sorry state was not enough. Han Yufan was still the CEO of Tianyi, and Imo Euro had not fallen to rock bottom yet. There was an even better show to come. After leaving the hotel, Imo Euro knelt on the ground in a daze. Coincidentally, her sorry state was recorded by Imo Ting, who was waiting for Tongning outside the hotel. She couldn't even take such a small blow. Chapter 54. In the dark, Imo Euro and the others couldn't see Imo Ting's silhouette. All they could see was their faces filled with anger as they used all sorts of insults to scold Tongning. Imo Ting watched from the dark as his lips curved upwards. How dare they scold his wife? It was fine if he didn't hear it, but since he heard it, then they were unlucky. So, Mo Ting picked up his phone in the dark and gave Lu Che a call. Find out which agency Han Ruoxue works for? Yes, President. Lu Che replied straightforwardly. Before leaving the U.S., he had to leave something behind. Only then would he be worthy of Han Ruoxue's evil plan of tricking Tongning to be Imo Euro's stepping stone. This was only done after Tongning had defeated the villain. He didn't think he was interfering with his wife's business, right? Translator, Uni Editor. Uni at the glittering celebration banquet, Tongning had a smile on her face as she mingled with the guests and reporters. As she didn't want Imo Ting to wait for too long, she excused herself by saying she wasn't feeling well. She then left with Lin Wei and Long Jie. As Tongning stepped out of the hotel, she caught sight of Imo Ting's silhouette in the dark. This man, the most dazzling man in everyone's eyes, was always willing to ignore his identity and wait for her in a secluded corner. Lin Wei and Long Jie didn't want to be a third wheel, so they hailed a cab back to the manor and left Tongning alone in Imo Ting's car. Imo Ting watched as Tongning approached. Her shoulders were still exposed. He immediately removed his suit jacket and placed it on Tongning's body. When you left, you should have asked Long Jie to grab a jacket. If I had let Long Jie take it, I wouldn't be able to wear the jacket that still carries your warmth. Tongning smiled before continuing. President Mo's jacket isn't something that just anyone can wear. Imo Ting helplessly and lovingly held onto her cold hand as he pushed her into the car. Let's go home. By the time they returned to the manor, the house had changed drastically. The bedroom was covered in fresh flowers, and the room was lit with candles. Imo Ting hugged Tongning from behind and kissed her back to celebrate your triumphant return. Over the past few days, you haven't had a good rest. It wasn't easy for you to get a day off. Tongning's voice was a little choked up. Why didn't you rest a little longer? We will be returning to China tomorrow. You will be busy again. If you really feel guilty, why don't you massage me later? She then held onto Imo Ting's hand and placed him on the bed. She then poured the essential oil that Long Jie had prepared for her onto her palm and gently pushed Imo Ting's back away. It went without saying that Emoting's body had always been well-proportioned and strong. However, due to the high intensity of work over the past few days, his muscles had become even tighter. Tongning was a little annoyed. Ever since marrying Emoting, it seemed she hadn't cared about his health much. "I will reflect on myself," Tongning said as she continued pushing. Emoting obviously didn't understand what she was reflecting on, so he let out a confused grunt from his chest. "I'll take good care of you." Ever since the incident with Han Yufan, Tongning had learned to cherish everything she had. She had already lost too much. She wasn't going to let anyone take anything away from her, especially not Emoting. Hearing these words, Emoting flipped over, wrapped his arms around her and pressed her against his chest. "No matter how I look at it, you are the one that needs more care than me. But when it comes to reflecting on yourself, you do need to reflect on yourself. Ning, I want you." Tongning looked at Emoting. Her eyes were bright and sincere. "What a coincidence. So do I. But you need to slow down." The couple were surprisingly in sync in this area. Tongning didn't put on an act, and Emoting wasn't flirtatious. Their relationship was purely based on their love and passion for each other. Tongning sets off the Oriental trend, explodes in Europe and the US. Tongning suppresses Emo Euro, keeps a low profile, makes her background. Tongning endorses ISN and becomes the new darling of the West. These were the headlines of the Oriental Daily News the next day. The low-profile Tongning that had been stepped on by Emo Euro finally defeated Emo Euro in the most professional way. She used her own abilities to show everyone what the real Oriental trend was. Because of the protection of Secret and ISN, Tongning's status was no longer the same as it was when she first arrived in the US. Of course, apart from the overseas fans, the domestic fans were also cheering for Tongning. Initially, Lin Wei's words of trust in Tongning had comforted the hearts of many fans. They waited silently for Tongning's victory. As expected, Tongning did not disappoint. Tongning had truly risen up. She was no longer the outdated model that everyone thought she was. Seeing this piece of news, Han Ruoxue and Emo Euro smashed everything in the hotel that could be smashed. Tongning's popularity not only represented Emo Euro's failure, it also meant that from now on, it would be impossible for them to suppress Tongning. As for Emo Euro, they had previously held her in high regard and even compared her to Hua Jingjing. But now, how could Emo Euro have the face to return? A model that appeared in a magazine but received zero attention had become Tongning's screen. This was a joke that would be enough for the industry to laugh about for an entire year. "That's enough, the two of you. Stop smashing things." Han Yufan looked at them with a headache. His heart was even more chaotic than Emo Euro and his sister. Tiany's shareholders had already pressured him. They were unhappy that he had been supporting Emo Euro all this time. They had invested so much manpower and resources, only to receive such a surprising result. Zero attention. This wasn't because Emo Euro was unlucky, it was because Tongning was too strong. They were businessmen. All they cared about was profits. If Han Yufan continued to be so stubborn, they couldn't just sit back and do nothing. "Yufan, why don't you ask your mother for help again?" Han Ruoxue suggested. However, Han Yufan didn't think his mother was particularly glorious, so he never mentioned her. Ever since his father passed away, his mother couldn't stand the loneliness, so she broke up another family and became the legal wife of a certain director. All these years, they rarely contacted each other because his mother had also become someone else's stepmother. "Yeah, let's discuss this matter after we return," Han Yufan replied impatiently. "Yufan, don't tell me you're blaming me?" Han Ruoxue sensed Han Yufan's emotions. "Yufan, I was indeed the one that came up with the plan, but who was I doing it for? Wasn't it for you guys? Emo Euro was the one that didn't live up to expectations, yet you're blaming me? Why aren't you blaming that bitch?" Not long after Han Ruoxue finished speaking, the phone in her hand began to ring. Seeing it was a call from the company, Han Ruoxue immediately collected her emotions and picked up. "Hello? Han Ruoxue. J. King is in such a big mess. Where are you?" The person on the other end of the line questioned Han Ruoxue. She didn't have high hopes for the artists in her hands, so she went to meddle in other people's business. As a result, a newly popular group was discovered by fans sucking on fans. The fame that they had worked so hard to build up was completely destroyed overnight. Meanwhile, Han Ruoxue was nowhere to be seen. President, from tomorrow onwards, you don't need to come anymore. I want to ban you from the entire U.S. Chapter 55. As soon as Han Ruoxue heard this, her mind went blank. She was about to explode. President, let me explain. What else is there to explain? You used the company's resources to help your brother? Did you think we didn't know? Secret was originally our resource. If one of our models ended up on the front cover, then this issue of the Oriental Trend would be ours. But what about you? Han Ruoxue, prepare to pay the compensation fee. After speaking, the man hung up the phone, not giving Han Ruoxue any room to refute. Han Ruoxue dropped her arms in a daze as she mumbled to herself, "It's over. It's all over. My career, it's all over." Sis, what happened? It's all because of you. Han Ruoxue yelled hysterically, because of you. I was fired by the company and now I have to pay $10 million in compensation. That is in US dollars, $10 million in US dollars. Han Yufan and Mo Euro were stunned. They never imagined the consequences would be so serious. Not only that, I will be completely blacklisted. Do you know what being blacklisted means? It means I will no longer have a place in the US. All these years of hard work, it has all gone to waste. After Han Ruoxue finished yelling, she angrily fell to the ground. At this moment, her heart was filled with regret and hatred. Why did she help her disappointing brother? Why did she help Mo Euro deal with Tongning? Sis, you won't be left with nothing. You still have me. Go away. You only have Mo Euro in your eyes. Han Ruoxue pushed Han Yufan away. Sis, I will help you. Okay, since you say you want to help me, then help me pay half of the compensation fee. Secondly, I want to become Tongning's manager. If you guys don't support her, I will. I want to use Tongning to make a comeback, Han Ruoxue said in a serious tone. Do you dare to agree? Han Yufan and Mo Euro looked at each other. This was complete nonsense. Not only would he not allow his sister to help an enemy, even if they were willing, Tongning would never allow Han Ruoxue to be her manager. But on the surface, he still had to play along. So, Han Yufan used Tongning as an excuse. After paying the compensation fee, I can still sell my shares. That way, we can still survive. But, sis, think about how we treated Tongning in the past. There's no way she'll ask you to be her manager. Besides, she already has Lin Wei. How can Lin Wei compare to me? Since Tianyi can no longer control Tongning's development, why don't we personally send her to the top? This way, we can make a name for ourselves. Most importantly, I can keep an eye on Tongning. This way, we can kill 3 birds with 1 stone. Han Ruoxue began to plot against Tongning. She was filled with hatred and dissatisfaction. She wanted to see how Tongning would behave after she became Tongning's manager. Hearing Han Ruoxue's words, Han Yufan actually had a plan. Even if he couldn't completely suppress Tongning, at least Han Ruoxue wouldn't allow Tongning to continue to shine. That way, he and Mo Euro would be able to take a breather. Sister, I promise you, you guys return to China first. After I'm done here, I'll come back to take Tongning over. Take over Tongning? That depends on whether Mo Ting agrees or not. Okay, Han Yufan replied. Mo Euro couldn't accept it. They were actually going to personally send Tongning to fame. However, she had indeed dragged Han Yufan and Han Ruoxue down with the secret magazine incident. So, there was nothing she could say. All she could do was look at Han Yufan with a wronged expression. Don't you want me anymore? What are you talking about? As you can see, we can no longer suppress Tongning. If my sister deals with Tongning, it will give us some time to catch our breath. Euro, I won't give up on you. As long as Han Yufan was still in her hands, then she would still be the wife of Tianyi CEO, and she would still have a chance to make a comeback. As for Tongning, she had already spread her wings. After all, she had plenty of time. At noon on the same day, KLA Agency released an announcement to terminate their contract. They pointed out Han Ruoxue's 3 crimes and stated that they would pursue her to the end. They also announced that they would completely blacklist Han Ruoxue. Of course, She was only a manager. Even if she fought with her agency, it wouldn't cause much of a commotion. However, when Tongning saw this piece of news, she was still surprised. She subconsciously looked at Ting. This man, really? However, ISN's commercial was about to start filming. As the location was set to be in Beijing, she had to return to China as soon as possible. This time, Tongning finally didn't need to be on the same flight as Han Yufan and Euro. Because of her popularity in the US, her fans no longer had to swallow their anger. Her fan club also organized a large group of fans to welcome her. Early in the morning, the airport was completely packed. Tongning, did you know Han Yufan and Euro are also on the same flight today? Lin Wei asked Tongning on the way to the airport. I know, so I don't need to remind you what to do, right? Tongning asked as she held onto Ting's hand as she read the newspaper. Previously, when she went to Lucin, Euro posted her itinerary in her group chat and allowed the anti-fans to cause trouble for her. This time, Euro returned in defeat and became the laughingstock of the industry. Of course, she had to return the favor. If she hadn't tasted the feeling of being surrounded by anti-fans, how could she be called a laughingstock? Tongning, you haven't taken advantage of Euro's pregnancy. What do you plan to do? Long Jie suddenly asked. As soon as Lin Wei heard this, she thought, Euro is pregnant? She has always wanted to win the Top 10 Model Award. But don't forget the rules. Pregnant women are not eligible to win, Tongning replied calmly. Then, what are you waiting for? Just expose her. According to Euro's personality, she will definitely find a way to get herself nominated. I will wait for her to step onto the stage and win the award, then I will send her on her last journey. After hearing Tongning's words, Long Jie understood. The feeling of losing something as soon as it was obtained was the most unbearable. Above all, as long as Euro didn't try to win the award, Tianyi still had hope. Only by obtaining something and losing it would Euro have no chance of making a comeback. Because, for the top 10 model awards, a model only had one chance. From start to finish, Ting held onto Tongning's hand tightly. He knew, deep down, even if Euro became part of the background, it wouldn't be enough to erase the hurt she had once suffered. So, she was going to continue to gain from Euro until Euro no longer had the strength to make a comeback. Until Han Yufan completely gave up on Euro, she was going to let Euro have a taste of being abandoned. However, Ting didn't want Tongning to be so depressed. So, he pulled out his phone, found the photo he had taken the night before and handed it to Lin Wei. Upload this photo online. It was a photo of Euro kneeling on the ground. It was a photo of Euro falling to rock bottom. Lin Wei looked at the black-bellied couple and a sly smile appeared on her face along with Long Jie. Chapter 56. Because of the difference in their status, Ting couldn't walk together with Tongning on the way to the airport. Even though it was a hot day, Tongning wrapped herself up tightly. But, before she stepped out of the car, Ting still patted her on the head and reminded her carefully, there are fans at the airport. If you are photographed, it will cause you trouble. I will wait for you in the first-class cabin. You are currently on the rise in your career. You can't afford to have any scandals. Tongning lifted her eyes and looked at Ting with a hint of guilt. She was obviously Ting's wife, yet they couldn't share a stage together in public. Sometimes, they even had to pretend to be strangers. But, she understood. Ting didn't want the success she had built up to today to disappear in a blink of an eye. Thinking of this, Tongning smiled as she interlocked her fingers with Ting's. Wait for me to reach the same height as you. At that time, I will personally tell everyone that we are husband and wife, an invincible couple. Ting hooked his arm around her neck and placed a kiss on her lips. His eyes sparkled like a vast sea of stars. Go ahead. In reality, Ting really wanted to hide Tongning away and only place her in their home. Only he would be able to touch her beauty. But Tongning was born for the runway. The light of a superstar was something that no one could resist. So, it seemed, sending Tongning to the pinnacle was his mission and mission. He felt helpless and excited at the same time. Tongning alighted from the Lincoln and boarded another luxury car. She then headed to the airport with Longjie and Lin Wei. Due to the popularity of the Dongfeng trend, there was no way the airport would be as peaceful as when Tongning first arrived in the U.S. So, Ting specifically arranged for 4 bodyguards to follow her. Ah, that's Tongning. On the sidewalk of the airport, screams could be heard one after another. Tongning subconsciously quickened her pace as she sighed in her heart. How could these people be so observant? How could they recognize her even though she was wrapped up so tightly? Tongning, you've really changed, Longjie sighed from behind. You could have chosen to use the VIP lane to avoid the fans. Are you going to do that? Of course not, Tongning rejected straightforwardly. If even I can't take it, how many fans will be heartbroken? My fans support my career. I have no reason to avoid them. So, Tongning chose to enter the airport with her head held high. As soon as she appeared, fans and reporters swarmed towards her. Ting's bodyguards immediately formed a human wall around her, allowing her to pass through the security checks and enter the departure lounge. Tongning, give us an autograph. Tongning, we really like you. You need to do your best. Tongning, welcome back to the US. Tongning had a smile on her face the entire time. Whenever there weren't too many people around, she would kindly sign autographs for passers-by. After entering the departure lounge, she even took pictures with many fans. Finally, Lin Wei stopped the passers-by and told them in a roundabout way that Tongning hadn't had a good rest due to work and asked for their understanding. Sitting in the departure lounge, Tongning looked around for Ting. Finally, in the middle of the seats, she spotted Ting sitting calmly with sunglasses on as he flipped through the latest issue of Secrets magazine. Beside him was an old American lady. Seeing him holding the magazine, she couldn't help but smile. Young man, after you finish reading it, can I have a look? This magazine has been so popular recently that I can't find it anywhere. Ting slightly nodded his head, of course. Tongning sat 2 rows behind Ting. Looking at his handsome back, she really wanted to ask him how it felt to be holding his wife's magazine in his hands. Actually, Ting could have waited in the VIP lounge, because he wanted to keep her company. Tongning's eyes turned a little watery as she pulled out her phone and typed, "Your back is so good." Ting handed the magazine to the old lady and pulled out his phone. With a slight smile, he replied, "When we get back, tell Lu Che to change the photo of you holding your hand to me. That way, you won't have 0 followers anymore, right?" "Please don't, President Imo. If you do that, I will have 0 followers." The corners of Ting's lips rose even higher. He suddenly thought of enlarging Tongning's photo and hanging it all over the wall of his bedroom. "I really want to turn around and look at you." Seeing these words, Tongning's heart felt a little sour. At this time, the announcement to board the plane could be heard. Tongning stood up and quickly walked to the front. Ting quickly followed behind her. That way, he wouldn't have to turn around. As they boarded the plane, more and more people began to recognize Tongning and tried to approach her. But, whether intentionally or not, Ting stood in front of them until Tongning entered the first-class cabin. After all, a wife was meant to be loved and protected. At least, it had to be like this within his sight. At the same time, a particularly interesting photo was released online in Beijing. It was the B-grade model Euro who had gone overseas from glory. Originally, she was supposed to overcome all the obstacles and reach a new stage in her career. After all, after going overseas, she had challenged all the famous models and used the gimmick of being an Asian model to scam a few endorsements. However, as soon as Secrets magazine was released, Tongning became a legend and she became a joke. 0 followers became synonymous with her. As if being ridiculed wasn't enough, early this morning, a long photo was released online. Inside, there were 10 photos of the model she had challenged. On the left was another model, and on the right was Euro. Everyone else had photos of their runway shows, while she only had one. The one where she was kneeling on the ground. As soon as the photo went viral, it attracted the attention of countless internet celebrities. They all started to write all sorts of ridiculing jokes. This was a result that Tiany's Han Yufan never expected. Because of Euro's defeat, her past scandals were once again exposed and humiliated. This was how the entertainment industry worked. The winner was always right. Euro, why don't you stay in the US for now? Han Yufan was worried she wouldn't be able to handle the shock and hurt the child in her stomach. No need. I want to see how Tongning is going to step on me. Most importantly, in 4 days' time, she would be entering the top 10 model awards. She still wanted to give it her all. Since she couldn't produce a good result, then she would have to find the judges. Okay then, let's head straight home from the tarmac in a moment, Han Yufan arranged. At this moment, he had no idea what Emo Euro was planning. However, even if they were to leave directly from the tarmac, they would still have to leave the airport. As for the sharp-eyed paparazzi, they already had their eyes on them and surrounded them. As for Emo Euro, who was sitting in the car, after seeing the humiliation online, she finally broke down in tears. She had lost too badly and fallen too painfully. Chapter 57. There was no doubt about Tongning's ruthlessness. This made Han Yufan, who was hugging Emo Euro to comfort her, realize how wrong he was in the past. The woman that was once willing to go through fire and water for him was now not going to show him any mercy. It was like she was going to use all her strength just to crush Emo Euro into pieces. It was only because it wasn't his turn yet, so he wasn't nervous. At the exit of the airport, Tongning's fans were everywhere. They were holding up signs of Tongning and chanting her name. Originally, this was Tiany's glory, but Han Yufan did not feel the slightest bit of happiness. Tongning, whose value had increased, was no longer under Tiany's control. Apart from placing all his hopes on Han Ruoxue, he had no idea what else to do. It was like Emo Euro's defeat had brought him to the bottom of the abyss. Was he really going to go look for his mother? Tongning's return was a complete victory. With the endorsement deal for ISN in Asia, it was guaranteed that from now on, she would only receive better deals than this. Most importantly, her low-profile personality and her personality of never relying on hype to gain attention had helped her accumulate a large number of loyal fans. As a result, her foundation had slowly stabilized and she had secured a place in the modeling industry. Han Yufan looked at the news regarding Tongning and Emo Euro and furrowed his brows. After returning home, he placed Emo Euro aside and hid in the study room to make phone calls nonstop. Emo Euro felt uneasy because she knew Tiany didn't belong to Han Yufan alone. With her current notorious attitude, it would only make things more difficult for Han Yufan. Yugu, help me check who the judges for this year's annual model awards are. Euro, what are you trying to do? Emo Euro's assistant was a little flustered. Don't do anything reckless. As long as you rest well, after some time, we will be able to return to the runway. I won't give up until I put up a final fight. If I tell you to go, then go. How much longer do you think Han Yufan can hold on for? Tiany's shareholders are constantly pressuring him to give up on us. It's only a matter of time before he gives up on us. Do you still want to go back to your life as a street vendor? Emo Euro's assistant paused for a moment. It was obvious she didn't want to, but he also didn't want Emo Euro to take the most dangerous step. If she did this, not only would she tear apart her relationship with Han Yufan, she might even be beyond redemption. Apart from sleeping with the judges, what else could she do? Euro, you have a child in your stomach. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing, Emo Euro said solemnly. The industry had always been a dark place. She once thought Han Yufan would be her most reliable support, but after the incident with Secret Magazine, Han Yufan could only watch as she returned in defeat without any way to salvage the situation. That was when she finally understood how useless this man was. Was it wrong for a fine bird to choose a good tree to nest in? Inside the study room, Han Yufan was still racking his brains over how to protect Emo Euro. Meanwhile, the people outside were already thinking of betraying him. Tongning's return, the popularity of Secret, and the endorsement deal with ISN not only brought her to new heights, it also brought Tiany to new heights. However, the CEO, Han Yufan, was having a hard time in this situation. ISN's commercial was still in the middle of filming, so after returning from the US, Tongning had not stepped foot into the office. It was not until 2 days later, after the commercial was completed, that she officially entered the office. Inside the CEO's office, Han Yufan looked at Tongning with a complicated expression. Tongning, you've already gotten what you want. Don't push her too far. Leave her a way out. Tongning looked at Han Yufan and replied calmly, when we were in the US, did you ever think of leaving me a way out? If you can't do it yourself, why should you ask others to do it? Han Yufan was at a loss for words. If the situation had been reversed and the famous person was Imo Euro, they would have used cruel methods to make it impossible for Tongning to recover. So, at this moment, apart from anger and shame, all he felt was regret. He no longer looked at Tongning instead. He looked at Lin Wei and instructed, Lin Wei, pack your things and prepare to manage another artist. Tongning, I've already arranged for a new manager. Hearing this, Lin Wei's face turned pale as Tongning furrowed her brows. What game are you trying to play now? Tongning, your contract is still 3 years away, and Lin Wei is also a manager under the company. I have the freedom to make arrangements for her. You have no right to interfere. Management contract? Could it be that Han Yufan thought he could influence her contract? In that case, you can at least tell me who you have arranged for me, right? Tongning questioned as she looked at Lin Wei, who was standing behind her, comforting her. It was only for a brief moment, but Lin Wei's flustered heart suddenly calmed down. She knew Tongning would eventually find a better manager, but there was no way she would continue to stay at Tianyi. She had betrayed Imo Euro and relied on Tongning. If she left Tongning, she would definitely be tortured by Imo Euro. But Tongning's gaze told her, even if I can't keep you, I can't send you to the tiger's den, and if Tongning wants to do something, there's nothing she can't do. So, she believed in Tongning and learned to stay calm. Tomorrow, the company will hold a grand celebration party for you. When the time comes, she will appear. Don't worry, this manager will only be more professional than Lin Wei. It won't do you any harm. Don't tell me you're afraid I will suppress you again. Han Yufan had a look of ridicule on his face. Unknowingly, Tongning had taken one step at a time to get to where she was today. Tongning did not say a word, nor did she resist. Of course, she didn't believe that Han Yufan truly had her best interests at heart. But she couldn't just reject him like this, otherwise, Tianyi would have to deal with her endlessly. She needed to be in control. As Tongning left the office, Lin Wei was left behind. Tongning glanced at her, gesturing for her to delay as long as possible. She especially couldn't let Han Yufan know about her work discussions. Lin Wei nodded her head. If she didn't even have this ability, she would have wasted all her time by Tongning's side. Where's Lin Wei? Long Jia asked as she saw Tongning walk out on her own. Han Yufan has arranged for her to manage another artist and arranged a new manager for me, Tongning replied. Who is it? Long Jia asked cautiously. Tongning did not reply. She simply put on her sunglasses and left Tianyi with Long Jia. Returning to Hyatt Regency, they returned to their own home. At this time, Imo Ting had already returned home. Hearing Tongning's words, the couple seemed to come to a common understanding. Ting, are you thinking the same thing as me? Tongning asked. Han Ruoxue. Imo Ting replied. As expected, Tongning chuckled. Chapter 58. She can't survive in the US anymore, so she naturally wants to use you to make a comeback. On top of that, you have the desire to be conquered by her, so she really wants you to submit to her. Imo Ting looked at Tongning in seriousness as he analyzed Han Ruoxue's thoughts. Of course, if you want to get rid of her now, it won't be difficult. Tongning smiled gently. She was naturally confident. Seeing her expression, Long Jia could tell a small matter like this wouldn't be too difficult for her, so she relaxed a little. Tongning's plan was to wait until after the top 10 model awards. During this time, no matter what changes might occur, she already had her own plans. So, all Long Jia needed to do for her was to comfort Lin Wei. After Long Jia left, the couple entered the bedroom to change into their home clothes. Imo Ting stood in front of the mirror with Tongning in his arms. Using an extremely magnetic voice, he asked beside her ear, You still don't plan to leave Tianyi? It's not time yet. She was still one step away from taking down Imo Euro. She wasn't going to let the two off so easily. But I think it's time to set my next goal. Imo Ting understood Tongning didn't like to have instant success, so he didn't mention signing with Hyrule again. Now that you have gained popularity, your next goal should be, I need a prestigious award, Tongning replied gently. She was well aware of her position and understood that the entertainment industry was a deep pool of water. Today, she could barely maintain her popularity, but tomorrow, it could be snatched away by some unknown artist. So, a prestigious award was the foundation to solidify her position. But, Ting, I am already 26 years old. I can't act like I did when I was 17 and participate in a modeling competition. Plus, the awards I received in the past, after being banned by Star King, no longer have any value. Back then, when I retreated, I was too decisive and cut off my own path of retreat. Back then, for Han Yufan, she had given her all. A model's best years, her most glorious years, she had selflessly given them to Han Yufan. But, in the end, what did she get in return? However, Tongning had no regrets. After all, this was the path she had chosen. It was just, she now had to bear the consequences of her stupidity. After hearing this, Ting couldn't help but feel his heart ache. If he had met Tongning earlier, would she have experienced so much pain? So, he placed a kiss on her neck and comforted her. It's okay. It's okay if you can't participate in the competition. You can be a model, walk on the runway, and shoot for magazines. I will accompany you. Let's make use of the exposure we have. After all, the industry is a true battlefield. Honey, don't give yourself too much pressure. Tongning took a deep breath, turned around and wrapped her arms around Ting's waist. She buried her head in his chest and sighed. Don't worry, with you in front of me as my target, I won't be destroyed so easily. Ting took a deep breath and carried her in his arms. After returning to the bedroom, he placed her on the bed and gently pressed his body against hers. I think the only way to make you forget the past is to love you with all my might. After hearing this, Tongning's ears turned red. She understood his words had a double meaning. You haven't eaten yet. After working all day, do you still have the energy? Prove it to me, and you'll know. After speaking, Ting placed a kiss on her lips. Because of Tongning's popularity, Yuro had become a street rat that everyone wanted to beat up. So, Han Yufan did not allow her to attend Tiany's celebration banquet. At the same time, she was given the opportunity to meet with the judges. The investigation of the judges was conducted by Yuro's assistant without Tiany's knowledge. There were a total of 7 people, 3 women and 4 men. Yuro directly ignored the 3 women and placed her gaze on a 40-something-year-old male judge. This was because he had a dark history in the past. It was just that he had tried to cover it up many times. Yuro's assistant looked at the photo of the man in Tongning's hand in fear. Lin, go find out when I will have the opportunity to meet with this judge. Yuro, I know what you are thinking. If I don't take this step, I will still lose Han Yufan. Not only that, I will end up with nothing, Yuro said ruthlessly. Right now, there was no longer a place for her in Beijing. If she didn't find another way out, she didn't know how she would end up being trampled on by Tongning. I will definitely get the top 10 model award, no matter what it takes. Yuro's assistant had no choice but to pull out her phone and respectfully call the man. At first, the man had no intention of responding. But, after Lin called 3 times in a row, the man finally picked up. Yuro's assistant expressed her intentions in a simple manner, and the man understood. In the end, the man requested to speak to Yuro. Yuro stretched out her hand to receive the phone and smiled. Mr. Li, because the man was a famous artist, she had to keep a low profile. You are Yuro, right? I've seen your shows before. Actually, you aren't bad. But, as you know, your reputation hasn't been too good lately. How about you come to Hong Fan Hotel at 7 p.m. tomorrow night, and we can have a good chat? Yuro's heart tightened as she gritted her teeth and nodded. Okay, I will be there on time. Yuro, is this the result you wanted? You are still pregnant. That old man is not human. Do I have any other options? Yuro lifted her head and asked her assistant. Tongning has forced me into a corner, not giving me a way out. I can't let her have her way. If she wants me, Yuro, to admit defeat, she must be daydreaming. The assistant had no choice but to clench her teeth. In that case, tomorrow, I will help you take some photos for evidence. I don't want that old man to get away with it. Han Yufan would never have guessed that Mo Euro had already made such a dirty decision. He had been working so hard on the outside, but in the end, he still couldn't protect Mo Euro's vain heart. Of course, this was retribution. Mo Euro betrayed him the same way he betrayed Tongning. Early that morning, Han Ruoxue had finished her contract in the U.S. and returned to Beijing. Han Yufan went to the airport alone to pick her up. As soon as she entered Han Yufan's apartment, she asked for Tongning's current address. Jia. Euro has been in a bad mood these past few days. Don't agitate her and keep your voice down. She didn't live up to expectations. She can't blame anyone else, Han Ruoxue scoffed. Tongning lives in Hyatt Regency, Han Yufan replied impatiently. How could she live in such a nice place? In that case, I will move in with her tomorrow. It will be more convenient for me to work. Han Ruoxue had no intention of living in Han Yufan's apartment, nor did she want to see Mo Euro. But, it seemed, Hyatt Regency wasn't a place someone like her could afford. Chapter 59. In order to take over Tongning, Han Ruoxue, Lin Wei, and Han Yufan were in the meeting room early in the morning to discuss Tongning's future plans. She didn't even inform Tongning herself. She said she wanted to support her with all her might. However, Lin Wei, who was in charge of handing over work to Han Ruoxue, was well aware that Han Ruoxue simply treated Tongning as a chess piece. No matter how high Tongning's status was, Han Ruoxue still wanted to control her artists. Lin Wei displayed Tongning's current job offers on the projector screen. Just the magazine offers alone, there were a total of 23. Han Yufan was a little shocked. Amongst these offers, there was no lack of second-rate magazines. He had no idea the public had such a high level of recognition towards Tongning. Of course, Lin Wei did not include the things that Tongning was currently discussing in the list. This included the offer from Creative Century and Star Age, two factories, to Tongning. With Tongning's current status, a small company like Tianyi Entertainment could no longer provide much help to her career. As for the contract that Han Ruoxue mentioned, it no longer had any binding force on Tongning. It turned out, Han Ruoxue hadn't learned her lesson from the battle with Secret. She probably thought Tongning's success was all due to luck. Right now, because of the Oriental trend, Tongning has gained a bit of fame in Europe and the US. As long as I strike while the iron is hot, with my connections, I can quickly help her appear on all sorts of shows. However, the prerequisite is that she listens to me, otherwise, I can also use up a person's fame. So, rather than saying tonight was a celebration for Tongning, it was more accurate to say it was Han Ruoxue's inauguration press conference. A manager that had been blacklisted by the Americans, in the blink of an eye, had returned to Beijing, paid her compensation, and continued to cause trouble. Meanwhile, on the other side, Tongning had already heard from Lin Wei about the meeting that Tianyi Entertainment had held that morning. Han Ruoxue had decided to focus her career overseas. It was indeed the first choice for a model. After all, only the international scene could help a model succeed. But Tongning was no longer 17 years old. Without the support of a strong background, she couldn't be like a young model and start off as a fitting model. It wasn't that she was afraid of suffering, but she couldn't afford to waste her youth. Even the weight of the next 3 years was fatal to her. Tongning, what do you plan to do now? Han Ruoxue is determined to get her hands on you. I have my ways. Lin Wei, thank you. Tongning thanked sincerely. Tongning, it's actually a good idea for me to take this opportunity to leave you. I know your manager will only get stronger and stronger. As for me, I don't have the right to stand by your side. You've taught me a lot and helped me understand a lot. Don't worry, we have a confidentiality agreement between us. I won't tell anyone about you. I just hope that in the end, Tianyi will let me go. Lin Wei made up her mind. If she followed Tongning, she would only be led around by Tongning and would not be able to play the role of a manager. She admired Tongning, but she also had her own goals. I wish you the best, Tongning nodded. Are we still friends? Of course. Tongning replied calmly. My indecent photos. I will leave them with you. Treat it as a warning to me. Tongning, I will quietly follow you and watch as you step onto the international stage. Linwei, I wish you happiness too. Linwei knew she had completed her mission and it was time for her to leave. Tongning was a person that never showed mercy to her enemies, but she never made things difficult for her friends. So, of course, Linwei was more than willing to be her friend. Not long after, the sky above Beijing was filled with stars. At this time, Tongning was ready to have an intense battle with Han Ruoxue. On the way to the hotel, Imo Ting held onto Tongning's hand to give her strength. Tongning looked at Imo Ting and smiled. Don't worry about me. I've already gotten used to it. I've already prepared myself for a big battle, even if Han Ruoxue is a difficult opponent. I just feel bad for you. Hubby, don't wait for me tonight. Be a good boy and go home to sleep. You work so hard every day, even if it's for me. You can't tire yourself out. Tongning held onto Mo Ting's warm hand. I promise you, I won't let myself be taken advantage of. You said it. If Han Ruoxue makes you feel bad, I will get Hai Rui to make a move. Mo Ting pulled Tongning into his embrace and placed a gentle kiss on her forehead. The longer they were married, the more he understood Tongning and the more his heart ached for this woman. She had to endure so much to break out of her cocoon and become a butterfly. Her road to rebirth was not always smooth sailing. Tongning lifted her head and looked at the mole on Imo Ting's earlobe. It was his trademark. It made her feel intoxicated and dizzy. I won't give you the chance to make a move. I've also prepared a present for Han Ruoxue. She wants to be my manager? I will make sure she has the guts to think about it, but she won't have the chance to say it. After all, she was already very good at tearing her enemies apart. Imo Ting looked at Tongning gently. Looking at her confident eyes, it seemed he really wouldn't have the chance to make a move. 7 p.m., Tongning arrived at the venue of the celebration banquet. At the same time, Imo Euro entered Hong Fan Hotel. Because Tiany's status was limited, the number of famous artists they could invite could be counted on one's fingers. Although Tongning was the main character of this celebration banquet, it was obvious Han Yufan was only throwing out a brick to attract Jade. His real motive was to get Han Ruoxue on stage. Tongning was tired of dealing with the guests, so she sat down in the middle of the room. She found a waiter and whispered a few things into his ear. The waiter nodded his head in understanding. Afterwards, with everyone's applause, Han Yufan stepped onto the red carpet and onto the stage to face the guests. Today, apart from celebrating Tongning becoming the spokesperson of ISN in Asia, we have an important announcement to make. Han Yufan was dressed in a brown handmade suit. He looked incomparably handsome on the stage. The artist director of Tiany will be my sister, the top manager, Han Ruoxue. Next, let's welcome her on stage to continue announcing the good news to everyone. Han Ruoxue was dressed in a long silver dress and a pair of 10 centimeters heels as she stepped onto the red carpet. She had an arrogant attitude like a queen as she scanned her surroundings. In the end, her gaze landed on Tongning. Her expression was sinister and vicious. It was filled with a strong desire to dominate. Seeing this, Tongning's eyebrows furrowed slightly. Hello everyone, I am Han Ruoxue. From today onwards, I will be taking on the role of artist director of Tiany Entertainment. I would also like to make an important announcement. Han Ruoxue continued to look at Tongning, like a hunter that had locked onto its prey. I would like to announce. As soon as the words, I will announce, left her mouth, the waiter that Tongning had instructed earlier suddenly came on stage with a phone and handed it to Han Ruoxue, interrupting her words. As soon as Han Ruoxue looked at the contents on the phone, she immediately glared at Tongning. Her face was filled with shock, anger, and a strong sense of unwillingness. However, Tongning had a smile on her face the entire time. It was just that this smile was an eyesore to Han Ruoxue. I would like to announce that at the beginning of next year, we will be creating a heavenly team. We have already invited a superstar to join us. Everyone, please wait and see. Han Yufan looked at Han Ruoxue confusedly. She was obviously going to announce that she was going to be Tongning's manager. Why did she suddenly change her mind? Sis, what's wrong? Everyone in the agency knows you are going to take over Tongning. What's wrong with you all of a sudden? Tongning. Han Ruoxue gritted her teeth as she yelled out this name. Han Yufan turned his head and looked at Tongning. She had stopped her? How could she have stopped her? What did she show you? Chapter 60. She already predicted that I would want to be her manager, so she threatened me with Creative Century and Star Age. If I dared to announce that I was her manager, she would also announce that she was terminating her contract with Tianyi Entertainment, Han Ruoxue said in an extremely cold tone. Yufan, she is using this method to tell us that the reason she is still in Tianyi is because we should be thankful and not treat her as we please. Yufan, she is using this method to announce that the reason she is still in Tianyi is because we should be grateful and not treat her as we please. Shameless. Cheap. I have never hated an artist so much. I hate her so much that I want to rip her to shreds. You should talk to her. She can't possibly only have this one request. From the looks of it, after a few confrontations, Han Ruoxue had gained a certain level of understanding towards Tongning. She had never imagined, as a top manager, she would be toyed with by Tongning over and over again. Han Yufan looked at Tongning and gestured for her to meet in the waiting room. Tongning was accompanied by Long Jie as they entered the backstage. The three of them were in the same room. Long Jie looked at Han Yufan cautiously. What else do you want? Set Lin Wei free. Tongning stated her own conditions. Otherwise, Lin Wei and I will be free and leave Tianyi. Okay, I agree to let Lin Wei go, but you cannot leave, Han Yufan said coldly. Han Yufan said coldly. Afterwards, the waiting room fell silent for a moment. Then, Han Yufan removed his disguise and asked with his true identity, how much do you hate me for you to come up with such a sinister plan and force Euro and I to this point? My sister wants to be your manager because she wants to support you. Who would have thought? You would threaten Tianyi with terminating your contract. Han Yufan, Imo Euro is your sister's right no matter what she does. As for my retaliation, I am evil and sinister. I've said it before. I won't actively harm anyone, but no one can scheme against me. Tongning's voice was calm, but it carried an irresistible power. By the way, why don't I see Imo Euro? Did you think I would allow Euro to get hurt in a situation like this? I don't know if she will get hurt. I only know that you should keep a close eye on her. Don't you know her? The deadline for the top 10 model awards is tomorrow. What do you think she will do to achieve her goal? Han Yufan was stunned for a moment, but he was still stubborn. Do you think she's like you, who only knows how to scheme? In my heart, she is very willful, but she can't be as ruthless as you. You can stab your ex in the back, and you can trample on your sister, who used to treat you as family. Really? Tongning looked at Han Yufan with a deeper meaning before turning to leave the hotel lounge. Not long after, Han Ruoxue entered the room and questioned Han Yufan. What does she want? She wants to stay and set Lin Wei free, Han Yufan replied. Yufan, I'm guessing, since she has already been offered an olive branch by another big company, yet she still chose to stay at Tianyi, it means she has a bigger plan waiting to be implemented. This Tongning is here to destroy the Han family. She hates you too much, and we can't do anything to her. Han Ruoxue gripped the wine glass in her hand like she wanted to crush Tongning's neck. So, what should we do now? Han Yufan no longer had the strength to deal with Tongning. I think it's time to look for my mother. As the wife of a famous director, Mother Han had accumulated a lot of connections in the industry. He wanted to see if she had a way to easily crush Tongning. Hong Fan Hotel. In a secret room, the ambiguous atmosphere had not completely dissipated. Lying in the arms of a stranger, Imo Euro successfully received a promise from the stranger. Baby, don't worry. Go home and wait for the news. The top 10 model awards are in the bag. Imo Euro smiled as she lifted the blankets and got up. As she put on her clothes, she said to the stranger, Mr. Lee, just to be on the safe side, you won't mind if I record it, right? After all, in this industry, you and I both know nothing is guaranteed. So, I need to be careful. What? You recorded it? The stranger didn't expect Imo Euro to be so cautious. As long as I win the award, I will immediately return the recording. Mr. Lee, I will go home and wait for the good news. The stranger's face twitched. In the end, he could only watch as Imo Euro left. Who would have thought? he would fail at such an easy task. Imo Euro walked out of the hotel lobby and boarded the car that her assistant had prepared for her. She quietly drove off into the night without anyone noticing. Euro, do you want to go to the hospital? Her assistant asked as he looked at her face. No need. I'm fine. Imo Euro shook her head. Imo Euro shook her head. In bed, in order to make Han Yufan happy, she had already practiced martial arts. She knew how to protect herself. Hurry and go home. Don't let Yufan notice anything. Euro, you've sacrificed too much. Otherwise, how am I going to compete with Tongning? Imo Euro looked out the window with a vicious expression. Little did she know, by risking her life to win the top 10 model awards, she was actually jumping into Tongning's trap. This was the entertainment industry, a ruthless industry. On the outside, it was too flashy, but how many people could actually hold on to their bottom line? 10 p.m. at Hyatt Regency. After Tongning finished talking to Lin Wei, she turned around to look at Imo Ting, who was sitting on the sofa. On the table were 20 to 30 invitations for her. No matter how big or small they were, he personally looked through every single one. Tongning's heart ached as she quickly sat down beside him and said, "Don't look through them. Let Long Jie deal with these contracts. It's fine. Long Jie can look through the contracts, but she doesn't know how to choose the best," Imo Ting said as he wrapped his arm around her. Has Lin Wei's matter been dealt with? Tianyi gave her a contract termination letter and let her go. Tongning nodded her head. Ting, you really don't need to look through them. I want you to go get some rest. Did you think I would look through anyone's contract? Mrs. Imo, no matter how small your matter is, it is still important to me. In that case, I'll give you a massage. Tongning stood up and walked around to Imo Ting's back to massage his shoulders. Tianyi will definitely know they can't keep you. During the top 10 model awards, I will help you keep an eye on their movements. Han Ruoxue will definitely not let you go so easily. So, during this time, I will be in charge of looking through your contracts. Who else have you looked through? Tongning asked with a smile. Actually, she hadn't thought about this at all. Do you want to know? Imo Ting asked. Chapter 61. You don't have to tell me. Although Tongning didn't mind, the thought of Imo Ting putting in so much effort for others still made her feel a little uncomfortable. Imo Ting looked at Tongning's lowered head and was overjoyed. He couldn't help but smile. Are you jealous? A little. Tongning nodded. Do you think, apart from you, is there anyone else in this world that has the right? Only you, no one else. Imo Ting pulled her onto his lap and wrapped his arms around her as he taught her how to look at the contract. However, Tongning was very smart in other areas. Whenever she came across something with a lot of words, she would get a headache. So, not long after, Tongning fell asleep in Imo Ting's arms with a slight smile on her face. Imo Ting hugged his wife as he looked at the contract. Although he was tired, he was satisfied. As Tongning fell asleep, he whispered in her ear, Ning, the day you return to your position as Beijing's top model, I will be your personal manager. Tongning was still in a daze. Hearing this, she subconsciously replied, in that case, I'm going to put my life on the line. Imo Ting let out a gentle laugh. Afterwards, out of 20 to 30 magazine invitations, he chose Trinity Queen as Tongning's first shoot after returning to China. Of course, Tianyi would definitely have an issue with Imo Ting's decision because TQ wasn't one of the best-selling magazines. But he was well aware that TQ's target audience was fashion designers and the middle and upper-class consumers. What Tongning needed to do now was use the Oriental trend to promote herself to fashion designers and those that had access to fashion resources. This was a risky move. But if the gamble paid off, then Tongning's runway show in the second half of the year would be guaranteed. As long as she maintained enough exposure on the runway and the magazines followed suit, a virtuous cycle would be formed. Most importantly, runway shows would allow her to come into contact with more endorsement opportunities. This was much easier than relying on a team. Of course, lose? There was no way he would let her lose. The next morning, Tongning woke up to find Imo Ting placing TQ's contract in front of her. She was a little surprised. Do you trust me? Imo Ting asked as he hugged her. Tongning pinched Imo Ting's tired cheeks and planted a kiss on his lips. I will shoot this one. not even asking why. Ting originally thought of a lot of reasons to convince her to accept him. Who would have thought, after a simple glance, she decided to trust him? The big boss of the entertainment industry stayed up late to pick it for me. Even if I fail, I'm willing. Seeing the helplessness on Ting's face, Tongning also became serious as she explained, "Firstly, I trust you unconditionally. There is no doubt about that. Secondly, I've looked through these offers myself, but I can't find a suitable target for my current awkward position. As you know, I can only make small plans, but I need you to help me see the bigger picture." A man's vanity was so easily satisfied. As long as his woman needed it, he would not hesitate even if it was a mountain of daggers or a sea of fire. "Then it's decided. The contract. I don't have a manager right now. I only have an assistant. Of course, I will have to personally negotiate with them. However, ISN still has some work to do, and Mina also has a cover. She said she will send someone over, so I don't need to fly back to the US. Ting stroked her hair as he looked at her confident expression and smiled. "Give me your email. I'll help you negotiate with them when I'm free." "Mr. Mo, you said you wouldn't interfere with my work. I haven't given you any resources, nor have I spent any money to help you build connections or buy a cover for you. Can't I share your burden as your husband?" Tongning had no choice but to nod her head. "Okay, Mr. Mo, but this is the only time." The couple arranged their next job and had a heartwarming breakfast. However, just as Tongning was about to leave the house, she received a phone call from Long Jie. "Tongning, the annual Model Awards has sent Euro an invitation. The agency is currently in an uproar." "When is the awards ceremony?" Tongning asked with a deeper meaning in her eyes. "In 10 days. This time, Euro will be able to be arrogant for a while. But, I'm curious, how did she manage to get through the judges?" Long Jie couldn't hold back her curiosity. "Tongning, do you think she's done something shady behind Han Yufan's back? If even you can't help but be suspicious, then there's no need to mention Han Yufan." Tongning maintained her usual calmness. "Let her be arrogant. After all, it's only a matter of 10 days. After 10 days, Euro will no longer exist in the modeling industry." "There's another piece of news. The committee has invited you to be the guest presenter that night." "I understand. Long Jie, I need to go back to the agency now." Since she had decided to shoot TQ, according to her contract, she would need to report it to the higher-ups. But she had a feeling they would object to her taking the TQ cover. "In that case, I'll come pick you up now." Euro is also at the agency. She's become a crab walking sideways again. Tongning smiled and didn't think much of it. Half an hour later, Long Jie arrived at Hyatt Regency in her car. Seeing Tongning in a good mood, she couldn't help but wink at her. "President, you've been well served, haven't you?" "Be serious." Tongning couldn't help but blush. "By the way, now that Lin Wei has left, Tianyi will definitely arrange a manager for you. What do you plan to do?" "No." Tongning shook her head. "I can negotiate the contract on my own. Plus, you can give me some advice." "Are you sure you're negotiating on your own?" Long Jie obviously didn't believe Tongning. Even if Tongning was willing to work hard on her own, according to how much Ting doted on his wife, there was no way he would let her do it herself. "I can't hide anything from you. Ting is helping me negotiate." Tongning nodded her head helplessly. "Wow, Big Boss's ability is amazing. Let me tell you, Tongning, you are overusing your talents." The two chatted and laughed as they walked into the building. However, the atmosphere at Tianyi was obviously different today. Tongning wanted to look for Han Yufan, but his secretary told her he was currently in a meeting. But when Long Jie went to take a look, there was obviously no one inside. What's more, a woman's laughter could be heard coming from Han Yufan's office. Tongning sneered as her lips curved upwards. She didn't continue to make things difficult for the secretary. It seemed Han Yufan and the others were celebrating inside and didn't want to see her. Chapter 62. Euro had made a comeback. No one was more excited about this than Han Ruoxue. She wanted to control Tongning so badly and wanted to see Tongning suffer a crushing defeat. Originally, She had already given up on Imo Euro, but who would have thought, just as the situation between Tianyi and Tongning was brewing, Han Ruoxue would make a comeback and win the top 10 model awards, becoming one of the winners. Congratulations, Euro. Plus, because you are one of the winners, you have been invited to attend the Bright Night Gala for the annual Model Awards. This gala will be attended by many popular artists from various companies, so there is a lot of fashion resources available. You need to take advantage of this opportunity. Rumor has it that there will also be a mystery guest. Of course, Tongning has also been invited, but Han Ruoxue grabbed Tongning's invitation and tore it in half right in front of Han Yufan and Imo Euro. Don't even think about going. Sis, are you sure this is a good idea? Han Yufan sat at his office desk with a mocking smile. However, it wasn't directed at Han Ruoxue, it was directed at Tongning. I don't know anything. If the organizers of the Bright Night Gala ask, just say Tongning is putting on airs and purposely skipped the event. She was once Tianyi's guard dog. Even if she went from being a low-class artist to a high-class artist, she is still a dog. Han Ruoxue stared at the two with determination and hatred. Her meaning was clear. Although Tongning didn't allow them to interfere with her work, it didn't mean they couldn't set traps and obstruct her in other areas. After all, she was still at the agency, and for many events, the organizers would go through the agency and not through the artists. After Han Ruoxue walked out of the office with a victorious expression, Han Yufan and Imo Euro fell silent. In the end, Han Yufan asked, Euro, don't you think the top 10 model awards is a bit fishy? Imo Euro froze. Her expression was a bit unnatural, but she tried her best to hold it in. Did Tongning say something in your ear? Don't shift your attention to Tongning every time something happens. I just want to ask, did you secretly tamper with the top 10 model awards? Han Yufan looked at Imo Euro with a dark expression as he lifted her chin and forced her to look him in the eye. Do you think I don't understand the darkness in this industry better than you? For you, I almost asked my mother to help me. If you dare to betray me behind my back, then it's over between us. Yufan, I'm also very surprised that I got the award. Imo Euro tried her best to maintain her composure, making herself look no different from usual. Don't let me find out that you've done anything dirty. For your sake, I've come this far with Tongning. Don't stab me in the back. I still have your child in my stomach. Do you think I would dare to act recklessly? The child was Imo Euro's last line of defense. Han Yufan looked at Imo Euro for a moment and finally decided to trust her. Fine, fine, I believe you. When God wanted to destroy a person, he would first make them fall into madness. And at this moment, Imo Euro was right in the middle of that madness. She had no idea that she was getting closer to danger. All she could think about was standing on the stage to receive an award. As Imo Euro was notified of her award, Tianyi had to make some changes to their plans. Han Yufan called for a meeting with the higher-ups and told them about how Tongning had threatened Han Ruoxue to terminate her contract. He wanted them to give up on Tongning and focus on Imo Euro and training new talent. The higher-ups knew Tongning wouldn't be able to stay, so they had no choice but to accept Han Yufan's suggestion. At this moment, Tongning was still reshooting ISN's commercial. After she finished work, Longjia quickly grabbed a jacket and wrapped it around her. Now that work is over, do you want to go to Tianyi and talk to Han Yufan about TQ? Let's not talk about TQ for now, Tongning replied. She knew, now that Imo Euro had received an award, Tianyi would no longer tolerate her. Plus, the higher-ups of Tianyi were a group of people that placed profit above everything else. TQ was too risky. If she were to bring it up now, she would definitely be rejected. Tongning, during this period of time, you need to be careful. Han Ruoxue and the other two have teamed up to bully you. Who knows what tricks they have up their sleeves. Longjia helped Tongning remove her makeup and change back into her own clothes. She then helped her out of the studio and interact with the fans outside. Before the awards ceremony, it's fine to avoid them. Tongning smiled. Should we find evidence of Imo Euro bribing the judges? Longjia, offending the judges may not be a good thing for us. Imo Euro will definitely want us to look for them. It would be too easy to get ourselves into trouble. Let's not take the risk. We already have her life and death card in our hands. Why do we need to do something unnecessary? Tongning had thought things through thoroughly. Since Imo Euro dared to do something like this, She must have made other preparations. She even dared to betray Han Yufan. Was there anything she couldn't do? Let her go and receive an award. There was no need to stop her. After all, in the end, she would still fall into the abyss. So where do we go now? To Hairue, to pick up Moting after work. Tongning lifted her eyes. Since work was over, she simply wanted to do what a wife wanted to do. Longjia also smiled. The relationship between Tongning and Big Boss was getting better and better. So, she was truly happy for Tongning. At 5 p.m., Beijing was still shrouded in activity. Tongning arrived at the cafe opposite Hairue Entertainment and sat down. She then sent Moting a message. After work, please head straight to the hotel opposite. I would like to treat President Imo to dinner. Imo Ting had just finished a long meeting. As soon as he saw Tongning's message, he immediately asked, "Do you want to come to the office with me? If I come, I will definitely attract attention. I think it's best if I don't come." Tongning actually wanted to go. She wanted to see how luxurious the office of the big boss of the entertainment industry was. "Come to the underground car park. I will tell Lu Che to come down and pick you up. There's a secret passageway." If Hairue couldn't even keep this little bit of privacy, how could it be called the kingdom of the entertainment industry? In that case, wait for me. After typing, Tongning put on her disguise and arrived at Hairue's underground car park with Longjia. Lu Che was already waiting at the entrance. He led Tongning into the secret passageway and headed straight up to the CEO's office on the 42nd floor. "Madam, if you want to come, all you have to do is let the CEO know and I will come down to pick you up. You don't have to worry about secrets being leaked at Hairue," Lu Che explained. "Because our internal employees have signed an agreement with the company, if any gossip is spread within the company, they will have to pay a penalty of up to $100 million. So, even if they see it, you don't have to worry about them spreading it around." As expected, Imo Ting's empire always had his ways and tricks. Chapter 63. As the elevator led directly to Imo Ting's office, Tongning did not need to worry about bumping into any of Hairue's staff. As soon as she stepped out of the elevator, she could see Imo Ting's spacious office. Tongning felt a lot more relaxed. Imo Ting's office was completely different from the Spanish palace decorations at home. Imo Ting's office was extremely simple and was filled with sharp metal furnishings. This revealed his efficiency, simplicity, and majesty at work. It made one subconsciously feel deep respect for him. At this moment, the man sitting at his desk was engrossed in signing some documents. The mole on his right earlobe made him look even more mature and devilish. It was said that men who were serious were the most handsome. Tongning stood in the distance in a daze until Imo Ting lifted his head and realized she was standing not too far away. "Sit on the sofa for a bit," Imo Ting said gently. He then instructed Lu Che, "Go prepare 2 cups of English black tea and some pastries. Also, grab a blanket." "Yes, President." Tongning watched as Imo Ting quickly signed some documents. He then stood up and walked over to sit beside her. "Why didn't you bring Longjia up?" "She said she doesn't want to be a light bulb." Lu Che brought the pastries into the office. After receiving the blanket, Imo Ting placed it on Tongning's legs. "The air conditioner is on a bit high." Tongning smiled and pushed Imo Ting away. "Go do what you need to do. Don't disturb me from enjoying the view." "View? The way you are at work." Mo Ting helplessly stood up and returned to his desk to work. Tongning, on the other hand, only lasted for a short while before she fell asleep on the sofa. Imo Ting got up and laid her down flat on the sofa. He then placed a pillow and blanket on top of her. How could she be so tired from accompanying him to work and filming a commercial? There were people going in and out of Imo Ting's office the entire time. Not only Lu Che, but also his secretary and other higher-ups. Every time they entered, their expressions were different from when they left. When they entered, they were calm. But when they left, they were so shocked their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. The big boss was already taken. Who was the beauty in Big Boss's office? Someone actually dared to sleep in Big Boss's office. The way Big Boss looked at the beauty was as gentle as water. Oh God, this was international news. But Everyone who went out felt like they couldn't gossip with others. But how outstanding did this woman have to be for Big Boss to fall in love with her? Could it be the current popular superstar Heavenly Queen? Tongning had been resting peacefully the entire time. Her sleeping posture was perfect. She had no idea that she had already caused a huge commotion at Hyrule. 8 p.m., Mo Ting finally finished his work. He carried Tongning from the sofa out of the office and placed her in his Rolls-Royce. Because of the noisy surroundings, Tongning woke up. She opened her eyes and looked at Mo Ting. Her gaze was clear and gentle. "You're off work? What do you want to eat?" Mo Ting asked as he started up the car. "You decide." Tongning tilted her head, hugged onto Mo Ting's right arm, and closed her eyes to continue her nap. The sports car sped out of Hyrue's underground car park. Behind them were the curious onlookers. Although they couldn't say it out loud, they could at least have a look. Even though they couldn't see clearly who the woman Mo Ting was, Mo Ting did not take Tongning to a restaurant outside. Instead, he personally prepared a sumptuous dinner for the couple. As Tongning watched Mo Ting's busy figure, she couldn't help but approach him from behind and hug him. "How could you treat me so well? You sure are easy to take care of. Just one meal is enough to move you." Tongning did not refute him. She simply placed her hands under Mo Ting's shirt and ran her fingers across his smooth abs. "Mr. Mo, I'm hungry. I'm cooking right now, but I want to eat you up." Mo Ting stopped what he was doing. Without a word, he turned around and carried Tongning out of the kitchen. Since his wife had a request, he had to fulfill it immediately. Late at night, the entertainment news was following up on the Bright Night Gala in 3 days. Mo Ting glanced at the news and lowered his head to ask Tongning, "I've seen the invitation list for the Bright Night Gala. You and Mo Euro are both invited." "Bright Night Gala?" Tongning lifted her head confusedly. "It seems Tianny hasn't notified you and has no intention of notifying you." Seeing Tongning's reaction, Mo Ting's voice deepened. The annual Model Awards was an annual event. The top 10 Model Awards were only one part of it. The more important awards were, of course, won by the most popular models. 80% of the awards went to Hyrule and Star King. Tongning straightened up. Her body was a little tense. Mo Ting noticed the change in Tongning as he gently stroked her hair and comforted her. "Just pretend you don't know about this. Let them think you won't be attending. When the time comes, I will send someone to walk the red carpet with you." "Ning, you've already thought of all possible scenarios. You don't need to be so upset." Tongning gradually calmed down as she gently nodded her head. "If it wasn't for you, I would have been tricked again. But there are no ifs. You have me." Tongning wrapped her arms tightly around Mo Ting's waist like this was her safest harbor in the world. The next day, Tongning indeed pretended she didn't know anything as she entered Tianny with Long Jie. Sitting in the office, Han Yufan was in a good mood. After going up against Tongning a few times, they had learned to keep a low profile. So, he no longer tried to show off in front of her. He simply pretended nothing had happened. "After the collaboration with ISN, are you going to continue with your work? Lately, there have been quite a few magazine offers and endorsements. Have you made your decision?" "I want to work with TQ." Tongning directly placed TQ's proposal in front of Han Yufan. Han Yufan was a little surprised. He couldn't understand why Tongning had chosen TQ. Although this magazine was going for the high end, its sales and reputation were far inferior to other medium to low-end magazines. Why did she choose this one? Have you thought it through? Han Yufan had no idea what Tongning was thinking. She had just taken a step towards success. Why didn't she strike while the iron was hot to increase her exposure? Instead, she chose a path that no one had high hopes for? "I've thought it through." Tongning nodded. "Now that Mo Euro has received an award, you should do everything in your power to support her. You won't interfere with what I want to shoot, right? Are you afraid the higher-ups will reject you?" Han Yufan asked coldly. "Tongning, you think too highly of yourself. If you want to shoot, then go ahead. I will definitely appease the higher-ups. But you need to know, you are currently doing something dangerous." "I'm well aware of it." After speaking, Tongning stood up. There was no longer anything else to talk about between her and Han Yufan. "You can't wait to self-destruct. Tongning, do you really want us to get what we want?" Hearing this, Tongning stopped in her tracks. However, she did not turn around. You should worry about yourself and Imo Euro first. Chapter 64. Tongning, you should be content with what you have. Don't climb any further. Otherwise, I don't know what else my sister Euro will do to hurt you. Do you really want to be covered in wounds? Han Yufan said anxiously as he looked at Tongning's back. Turn around and stop trying to get revenge. Tongning did not stop walking. She felt Han Yufan's words, after all he had done to hurt her, were a bit comical and laughable. Afterwards, Tongning turned her head and subconsciously looked at the rubbish bin not too far away from Han Yufan. The remnants of her invitation were still lying there. Revenge? Han Yufan, all I want is fairness. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, right? Have you ever been fair to me? Han Yufan's expression froze as he hurriedly followed Tongning's gaze. But Tongning had already turned her head away. All he could see was the view of her back. Han Yufan guessed, did Tongning know about the Bright Night Gala? After leaving Han Yufan's office, Tongning walked out of Tiany's main entrance. However, Imo Euro couldn't change her flamboyant nature. She stood in front of the entrance and blocked Tongning's way. She had a frivolous and arrogant expression on her face. Isn't this our Beijing's top model, Tongning? You've been all over the place recently. Move aside, Tongning said calmly. I received an invitation to the Bright Night Gala. What about you? Our top model. Imo Euro placed her head on Tongning's shoulder. Her voice was filled with helplessness and ridicule. So what if you've starred in the Oriental trend? Haven't you still been rejected by the modeling industry? I'm sure you know better than me how important the Bright Night Gala is to a model. Imo Euro pulled out her invitation and flaunted it in front of Tongning. I have one. But you don't. Oh, by the way, you don't have an invitation? You don't even have a decent manager. How are you going to negotiate a contract? Tongning did not move an inch as she allowed Imo Euro to act arrogantly. After Imo Euro finished speaking, Tongning revealed a slight smile. Using a voice that only the two of them could hear, she said to Imo Euro, the judge's bed is softer than Han Yufan's, isn't it? Imo Euro's body stiffened. You don't have to worry about the Bright Night Gala and whether or not someone will help me negotiate the contract. You should use more perfume to cover up the smell on your body. The smell of adultery is too strong. How much longer do you think Han Yufan will be blind? After speaking, Tongning looked at Imo Euro with a hint of guilt. She let out a laugh, pushed Imo Euro away, and left Tiany, leaving Imo Euro to curse behind her back. Imo Euro's professionalism had never been high because she had spent too much time scheming and vanity. She also had a close relationship with Han Yufan. Otherwise, in the 4 to 5 years she had been in the industry, she would have reached the top. She wouldn't still be a B-grade model. After leaving Tiany, Tongning found Long Jie sitting in the car with a mysterious smile on her face waiting for her. Tongning was confused. In the end, she couldn't help but laugh. What's the good news? I'll take you somewhere. After speaking, Long Jie started the car and drove Tongning to the most luxurious downtown area of Beijing, where they entered the most luxurious clothing brand. Why did you bring me here? Tongning looked at the empty display cabinet. She was a little afraid of being discovered by fans. To buy a battle outfit, this deep and charismatic voice did not come from Long Jie. It came from Imo Ting, who had been waiting in the VIP area for quite some time. He was dressed in a dark blue suit that wrapped around his tall and muscular body. His steps were confident and dignified, with a confident and charming smile on his face. He was like an emperor from a painting. Ting, the Bright Night Gala. Tiany doesn't want you to appear, but I will make sure you shine. Imo Ting walked behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, forcing her to look at his perfect curves. She had a pair of slender legs that even God would be jealous of. Long Jie tactfully left the luxury store, leaving the couple behind. Feeling the warmth of his body, Tongning couldn't help but grumble. Aren't you busy with work? No matter how busy I am, I can't forget to care about you. Imo Ting mumbled beside Tongning's ear as he gently sucked on her earlobe. Did I not tell you? I am the Bright Night Gala's mystery guest? Tongning was stunned for a moment, but quickly regained her composure. Rue had won so many awards, it was only natural for Ting to attend. This will be the first time since we got married that we will be on the same stage together. The time at HF's show doesn't count, so I really value this opportunity. The reason why I brought you to this store is because they have the best confidentiality. Plus, they recently released a couples collection. It is one of a kind. After hearing this, Tongning finally understood Ting's intention. He wanted to wear the same collection as her that night and wear accessories that belonged to the two of them. Even though their relationship couldn't be revealed to the public, he wanted her to understand that no matter what position he was in, they were still husband and wife, the only person that could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Even though their outfits made it impossible to tell their relationship, as long as the logo was the same. Tongning also felt safe and warm. Most importantly, they were going through thick and thin together. Does that mean you've already made your choice? Tongning's heart warmed up. She was surprised by Ting's attentiveness to this extent. So, she had no doubt that Ting had already prepared everything. Come with me. Ting held onto her hand and led her to the fitting room. Behind the partition, Tongning could see the outfits on the mannequin's body. Her eyes immediately lit up in surprise. Go try it on. Tongning endured the burning sensation in her throat as she entered the fitting room. Her hands trembled as she removed the dress. She had been a model for so many years and had worn all kinds of outfits, but this was the only dress that made her want to cry. It was a champagne-colored mermaid dress with 2 transparent shoulders. The cut was just right, making Tongning's body look even more slender and perfect. The dress had abandoned the usual crystals and was instead adorned with bright and noble pearls. Wearing it on her body, she looked gentle and lively, like someone from a painting. Tongning stood in front of the large mirror in a daze as her heart raced. It wasn't until Ting finished changing into his dress that he quietly approached her from behind. At this moment, Ting was dressed in a gray retro handmade suit with a leopard print tie. In his chest pocket was a folded handkerchief. He looked like a British gentleman. In fact, he looked a little more resolute and calm than the nobility. Tongning looked at the couple through the mirror and held onto Ting's hand tightly. We look too much like a married couple. What if someone guesses our identity? You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.